"Call off your dogs, lady, or we'll put you down first." Those were the last words Venom Jackson spat before discovering that threatening a former military working dog handler was the biggest mistake of his criminal career. On a sweltering Arizona morning, Victoria Parker's 18-wheeler, loaded with life-saving medical supplies for dying children, became the target of the Southwest's most feared motorcycle gang, the Sand Scorpions. But as the notorious outlaws surrounded her truck, they failed to understand one crucial detail. The two German shepherds in her cabin, Max and Duke, weren't pets, but decorated combat veterans with over 200 successful military missions under their collars. The story spans 72 brutal hours across 3 states as one woman and her loyal K9 partners transform from prey to hunters. Using tactics perfected in the world's deadliest combat zones, Victoria and her dogs would not only protect their precious cargo, but systematically dismantle the largest weapons trafficking operation in Arizona's history. In trucking circles, they still talk about the day the Sand Scorpions learned that some highways are protected by more than just law enforcement. They're guarded by warriors who never lost their edge, and K9s who never forgot their training. Quick pause before we continue. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. Duck 2. Clock on Victoria's dashboard read 4:37 a.m. when she pulled out of the Phoenix Depot. Max's head rested on her thigh, while Duke maintained his vigilant watch from the passenger seat. The medical supplies in her trailer needed to reach Houston Children's Hospital by tomorrow night. Children's lives depended on it. Victoria reached down to scratch behind Max's ears. "Ready for another long haul, boy?" The German shepherd's tail thumped against the seat, but his eyes never left the road. Some habits from their deployment days never faded. The CB radio crackled to life. "Heads up, eastbound on I-40. Sand Scorpion spotted at the Broken Arrow truck stop. They're shaking." "Down drivers again." Victoria's jaw tightened. She'd heard about the Sand Scorpions. Everyone had. What started as a small-time motorcycle gang had evolved into something far more dangerous. Her fuel gauge showed half a tank. She'd need to stop eventually, but not at Broken Arrow. "Thanks for the heads up," she responded into the radio. "Any word on alternate stops?" A different voice cut in, female with a slight Hispanic accent. "This is Elena, coming westbound. Desert View Station at mile marker 147 is clear. Passed through 20 minutes ago." "Appreciate it, Elena. Stay safe out there." Victoria checked her side mirrors, a habit drilled into her through countless combat. Patrols. The sun was just beginning to paint the horizon in shades of purple and gold. Duke's ears suddenly perked up, and Victoria instinctively scanned the road ahead. A group of motorcycles had pulled onto the highway from a side road, their riders wearing the distinctive leather vests of the Sand Scorpions. "Easy, boys," Victoria murmured. Both dogs had shifted to alert positions, their training kicking in. As they sensed her tension, she maintained her speed, neither slowing nor accelerating. The bikers were about a quarter-mile ahead, 5 of them spread across both lanes. The CB crackled again. "Vic, this is Elena. Got reports of more Scorpions heading east from Flagstaff. They've been boxing in trucks. Be careful." Victoria's mind raced through her options, tactical assessment as automatic as breathing. The dogs sensed her shift in demeanor, their postures changing subtly. This wasn't their first time facing danger together. "Copy that, Elena. I've got eyes on 5 ahead of me now." Victoria's voice remained calm, but her grip on the wheel tightened. "Anyone got eyes on state troopers in the area?" Static answered. Her call. The bikers ahead had slowed slightly, forcing her to reduce speed. In her mirrors, she caught the glint of more motorcycles approaching from behind. The morning sun glinted off their chrome pipes and leather jackets. Victoria reached for the small duffel bag tucked behind her seat. Not her usual travel bag, but one that contained remnants of her military days. Inside was her satellite phone, a first aid kit, and specific equipment for Max and Duke. She'd maintained their training even after leaving the service, a decision that might prove crucial very soon. Looking like a quiet morning for law enforcement, Elena's voice returned, thick with concern. "You got your partners with you?" "Affirm." Victoria allowed herself a small smile. Max and Duke's presence had saved her life more than once in Afghanistan. They're ready to work if needed. The bikers ahead had spread out further, deliberately blocking both lanes. Their intentions were clear. They wanted her to stop. Victoria's mind flashed back to her last convoy operation overseas. Different terrain, different enemy, same tactical problem. Her truck's engine rumbled steadily as she maintained her speed. The medical supplies in her trailer weren't just cargo, they were children's lives. She'd sworn an oath once to protect the innocent, and that oath didn't end when she left the service. "Elena, if you're still copying, I'm about to have a situation here." Victoria kept her voice level. "Might need you to make some calls if this goes sideways. I'm 10 miles back, turning around now. Hold tight." Victoria watched as one of the bikers ahead raised his arm, signaling her to pull over. In her mirrors, the group behind had grown to 7 riders. She recognized the patch on their leader's vest. Venom. Jackson himself was among them. Max and Duke sat perfectly still, their training evident in every muscle. They'd run hundreds of missions together, faced down threats from insurgents to IEDs. These dogs weren't pets. They were soldiers. And so was she. The rising sun cast long shadows across the highway as Victoria Parker, former military working dog handler, faced a decision. The Sand Scorpions were about to learn a harsh lesson about choosing their targets. But first, she had to spring their trap, on her terms. "All right, boys," she said softly to her K9 partners. "Looks like we're about to earn our keep." Her hand reached for the duffel bag again, this time retrieving a familiar tactical vest. Time to show these boys what real road warriors look like. Victoria's 18-wheeler maintained a steady speed as the Sand Scorpions closed in from both directions. Her years of convoy experience had taught her that slowing down was more dangerous than keeping pace. She watched through her mirrors as Venom Jackson gestured to his riders, coordinating their positions with practiced precision. "You've got incoming on your left, Vic," Eleanor's voice crackled through the CB. "Counting 4 more bikes joining. The party!" Victoria smiled grimly as she reached over to pat Duke's head. The German Shepherd's muscles were coiled tight, ready for action. Max maintained his position, eyes fixed on the bikers ahead. "Copy that, Elena. How far out is your backup?" "State troopers are 20 minutes out. Local sheriff might be closer." The lead biker ahead raised his arm again, more insistently this time. Victoria recognized the patch on his vest. Razor Mitchell, Jackson's second in command. Her mind flashed back to a training exercise in Kandahar. When surrounded, create your own exit. "Time to earn your breakfast, boys," Victoria murmured to her dogs. She reached down and pressed a button on their tactical vests, a simple command signal they'd practiced hundreds of times. Both dogs shifted slightly, understanding that playtime was over. The first biker pulled alongside her cab, revving his engine. "Pull over," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the road noise. Victoria kept her eyes forward, maintaining her speed. In her mirrors, she saw Venom Jackson closing the gap behind her. Her CB crackled again. "This is Sergeant Nash, Arizona Highway Patrol. We've got reports of harassment on I-40. Any trucks in the area, please respond." Victoria keyed her radio. "Sergeant, this is Victoria Parker, eastbound at mile marker 152. Got about 15 bikes trying to force me off the road. Medical supplies. On board for Houston Children's Hospital." "Copy that, Ms. Parker. Stay on your current heading. Units responding." A loud bang against her driver's side door made Victoria flinch. One of the bikers had struck her truck with something. Max let out a low growl, but held his position. These weren't the undisciplined dogs most people expected. They were combat-trained professionals. Last chance, lady. The biker on her left was close enough now that she could see the skull tattoo on his neck. Pull over, or we'll make you. You pull over. Victoria's response was to flash her running lights twice, a signal to Max and Duke. Both dogs immediately moved to their practice positions, becoming visible to the bikers on either side. The sight of two military-grade German shepherds in tactical vests caused the nearest rider to swerve slightly. You see that, Venom? Razor's voice carried across the highway. Bitch has got war dogs. Through her mirror, Victoria saw Jackson's face darken. He gestured to his riders, and suddenly the group behind her fell back slightly. She'd seen this before. They were creating space for something. Her suspicions were confirmed when she heard the distinctive sound of a shotgun being racked. Victoria pressed her thumb against a hidden button on her steering wheel. The side compartments of her truck sprung open, revealing modifications that would make any military convoy commander proud. Not weapons. She was smarter than that. But a series of high-intensity flashes and smoke dispensers, perfectly legal for civilian use. Elena, if you're still copying, things are about to get sporty, Victoria said into her radio. Might want to warn that sergeant to step on it. The first shotgun blast struck her trailer, pellets spraying harmlessly against reinforced panels. Victoria had learned long ago that some paranoia was healthy in her line of work. The next shot was aimed higher, toward her cab windows. The ballistic glass, another paranoid investment, held firm. Max, Duke, status 1, Victoria commanded. Both dogs responded instantly, their barks sharp and aggressive enough to make the bikers on either side pull away further. She'd spent years training them to sound as threatening as possible while maintaining perfect discipline. Through her windshield, Victoria saw Razor pull something from his jacket. A ball bearing attached to a chain. A window breaker. These guys were professionals. She had to give them that. Time to show them what real professionals looked like. All right, boys, she said calmly. Let's show them why you don't mess with a military working dog team. She flipped 2 switches on her dashboard. Instantly, the highway behind her filled with dense white smoke, legal grade, but enough to confuse and disorient. The high-intensity flashes activated next, their strobing effect magnified by the smoke. The bikers behind her scattered, temporarily blind and disoriented. Through the chaos, Victoria caught a glimpse of Venom, Jackson's face. No longer confident, but twisted with rage. He shouted something to his men, but it was lost in the rumble of engines and the controlled chaos. As the smoke began to clear, Victoria saw what she'd been waiting for, red and blue lights in her mirror, still distant but approaching fast. The Sand Scorpions had noticed too. They began to pull back, but not before Jackson pulled alongside her cab one last time. "This ain't over," he shouted. "Nobody makes fools of the Scorpions. We know what you're carrying, and we'll get it one way or another." Victoria's blood ran cold. They knew about the medical supplies. This wasn't random harassment. They'd targeted her specifically. As the gang peeled away, taking side roads to evade the approaching police, she keyed her radio one more time. "Sergeant, Nash, those bikers just confirmed they knew about my cargo. This wasn't random. They're after the medical supplies." "Copy that." Nash's voice was grim. "Pull over at the next station. We need to talk about what just happened and why the Sand Scorpions would be interested in medical supplies." Victoria glanced at her dogs, both still alert but calming as the threat receded. This was supposed to be a simple delivery run, but now she was caught up in something much bigger. The Sand Scorpions wouldn't give up easily. She knew their type from her military days. They'd be back, better prepared next. Time. "Good boys," she said softly to Max and Duke. "Something tells me that was just the warm-up." She checked her mirrors one last time, watching the last of the bikers disappear into the desert landscape. The sun was fully up now, promising another scorching Arizona day. But Victoria Parker had survived worse heat than this. in more ways than one. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Sergeant Christopher Nash stood beside his patrol car at Walker's truck stop, watching Victoria's rig pull in. The reinforced panels on her trailer caught his attention. Definitely not standard issue. Max and Duke's alert barks echoed across the nearly empty lot as Victoria expertly maneuvered her truck into position. "Military working dogs," Victoria explained, catching Nash's interested look as she climbed down from the cab. "They don't forget their training." She kept one hand near the tactical vest she wore, a habit from years of combat zone operations. 3 supply trucks hit in the past month, Nash said, getting straight to business. All carrying medical supplies, all specifically targeted. But this is the first time the Sand Scorpions have gone after one in broad daylight. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "They knew what I was carrying. How? That's what concerns me." Nash pulled out his tablet, showing her surveillance photos. "They're not just stealing supplies, they're stealing specific items. Ephedrine-based medications, chemical precursors, anything that could be used to manufacture certain types of drugs." The sound of an approaching truck interrupted them. Victoria tensed, but relaxed when she recognized Elena's rig pulling into the lot. Max and Duke remained alert but calm. They remembered her scent from previous encounters. "Sorry I'm late," Elena called out, jumping down from her cab. "Had to make sure none of those scorpion bastards followed me." "You okay, Vic?" Victoria nodded. "Thanks to your warning, but we've got bigger problems." She turned back to Nash. "Those supplies I'm carrying, they're not just any medications. They're specialized treatments for children with rare conditions. Some of these kids don't have much time left." Nash's face hardened. "Which makes your cargo even more valuable on the black market. These aren't just common street thugs, Ms. Parker. The Sand Scorpions have evolved. They're working with someone who knows pharmaceuticals. Don Walker's been letting us use his stop as a safe house," Elena added, gesturing to the truck stop's main building. "He's ex-military too. His wife Carol keeps watch while he runs the place." Victoria's mind raced back to a similar situation in Kandahar. Protecting medical supplies meant for local children while navigating threat-filled territory. In the service, we'd set up multiple fallback points, create uncertainty about the real route. "This isn't a war zone, Ms. Parker," Nash cautioned, but there was respect in his voice. "Tell that to the Sand Scorpions." Victoria pulled out a map, old-school paper, harder to track than GPS. "Elena, you said they've been hitting trucks at specific points?" Elena nodded, pointing to several locations. "Always near these turnoffs. They have hideouts in the desert, places to stash what they steal until they can move it. Classic insurgent tactics," Victoria muttered. "They're not just grabbing targets of opportunity. They have inside information." She watched as Don Walker emerged from the truck stop, his military bearing evident in his walk. "Place is secure," Don reported. "Carol's got eyes on all approaches, no sign of pursuit." He studied Victoria's truck. "Nice modifications. Remind me of our old convoy vehicles." Victoria allowed herself a small smile. "Same principle, though I never expected to need them stateside." "World's changing," Don replied grimly. "These gangs aren't what they used to be. Venom's got someone backing him, someone with resources. They've hit 3 of my regular customers in the past month." Nash spread out more photos on the hood of his car. "We've been building a case, but they're careful. They've got someone warning them about police movements, someone with access to shipping manifestos. That's how they knew about my cargo," Victoria realized. "But they didn't expect resistance. They're used to drivers who'll give up their loads." When threatened, Elena laughed darkly. "They definitely didn't expect war dogs and a combat veteran. Venom looked ready to burst a blood vessel when you deployed that smokescreen." "Which means they'll be back," Victoria said, her tactical mind, "already working on scenarios. And next time, they'll be better prepared. We need to change the equation." "What are you thinking?" Nash asked, recognizing the look of someone forming a plan. Victoria traced routes on the map. They're expecting me to take the main highway. Probably have ambush points already set up, but there are alternative routes, harder to traverse, but also harder to predict. The old mining roads, Don suggested. Rough terrain, but your rig can handle it. I used to run those routes during my service days. We can't provide official escort, Nash said reluctantly, not without more evidence. And if they do have someone inside the department, then we need to be smarter than them, Victoria finished. She looked at her dogs, both still maintaining their vigilant watch. Max and Duke can give us early warning of any approach. Their hearing and smell are better than any electronic sensor. Eleanor stepped forward. I can run ahead, scout the routes. They don't know I'm involved yet. Victoria shook her head. Too risky, but you can help another way. She outlined her idea, watching as understanding dawned on their faces. Nash whistled softly. That's either brilliant or crazy. Maybe both. Sometimes crazy is exactly what you need, Victoria replied, checking her watch. Those kids in Houston need these supplies within 36 hours. We've got no choice but to move, and move smart. Don disappeared into his truck stop, returning with satellite photos of the terrain. These are recent. Show all the changes from the mining operations. If you're really going to do this, you'll need to know every escape route. As they bent over the photos, planning their next moves, Victoria felt a familiar tension in her gut. The same one she'd known before complex operations overseas. Max and Duke sensed it too, their posture shifting subtly, ready for whatever came next. One more thing, Nash added, his voice low. We've got reports of someone new working with. The Sand Scorpions, goes by Crimson. Ex-military, like you, just thought you should know what you're up against. Victoria nodded, absorbing this new information. The stakes were rising, but she'd faced worse odds. Those children were counting on these supplies. Even if they didn't know it, she hadn't left her principles behind with her uniform. All right, she said finally, let's get to work. We've got a gang to outsmart and some kids to save. She looked at her unlikely team, a state trooper, a fellow trucker, a truck stop owner, and her loyal K-9 partners. Not exactly a military unit, but it would have to do. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as they finalized their plans. In the distance, heat waves distorted the horizon, making the desert shimmer like a mirage. But there was nothing illusory about the danger they faced. The Sand Scorpions were coming. The only question was whether Victoria and her improvised team would be ready for them. Dusk painted the desert in deep purples as Victoria's truck rolled down the old mining road. Max's ears perked forward. He'd caught something. Duke's low growl confirmed it. Someone was watching the road ahead. Movement at your 2 o'clock, Don's voice crackled through the secure radio. From his truck stop's roof, he had a commanding view of the surrounding terrain. Looks like they took the bait. Victoria checked her mirrors. Elena's truck, carrying a decoy load of medical supplies, was visible on the main highway several miles away, surrounded by police escorts. The perfect target? Too perfect. They're not buying it, Victoria muttered. Her years of combat experience screamed that something was wrong. Carol, any movement near the ridgeline? Negative on the... Wait. Carol's voice tensed. Single. Rider, moving fast. Different bike than the others. Custom military grade. Crimson, Victoria breathed. Nash's intelligence was right. This was no ordinary gang member. The way the bike moved, hugging terrain, minimizing exposure. This was someone with serious tactical training. Max suddenly stiffened, focusing on a point in the darkness. Victoria trusted her dog's instincts. They'd saved her life more times than she could count. Don, we've got company in the rocks. They're herding us. Confirmed, Don replied. 6 bikes moving parallel to your position. They're pushing you toward Dead Man's Canyon. Victoria's mind flashed back to her last mission in Afghanistan. Another canyon, another ambush. She'd lost good people that day, but she'd also learned valuable lessons. "Elena, you catching this? Got eyes on the main group following my decoy," Elena responded. 20 bikes at least, but something's not right. They're not trying hard enough to catch me. Because they know you're the decoy, Victoria realized. They've got someone inside the department, remember? They're playing with us, while the real trap... Her words cut off as bright lights suddenly illuminated the canyon ahead. Multiple vehicles had been carefully hidden, their headlights now creating a wall of blinding illumination. "Damn!" Victoria breathed. "This is him. This is Crimson's play." The radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't her team. A new voice, cold and professional. "Vehicle carrying shipment Delta 74. You're entering a restricted area. Cut your engines and prepare for cargo inspection." Victoria's hands tightened on the wheel. They even knew her shipment code. The leak went higher than just local police. "Nash, you getting this?" she whispered into her secure line. "Recording everything," the sergeant confirmed. "But we're 15 minutes out at best. You're on your own." Victoria reached down to adjust Max and Duke's tactical vests. "Carol, Don, any chance of backup route?" "They've got all approaches covered," Don reported grimly. "This was well-planned, military-grade planning." Victoria allowed herself a small smile. "Good thing we've got military-grade surprises." She keyed her radio to respond to Crimson's demand. "This is Commercial Transport 7-4. I'm carrying time-sensitive medical supplies for pediatric patients. I have full authorization to..." "Cut the act," Crimson's voice interrupted. "We know who you are, Handler Parker. Afghanistan 2019. They still tell stories about how you and your dogs saved that convoy. Very impressive. But this isn't a war zone, and you're outnumbered." The lights ahead shifted, revealing more bikes and several heavy trucks. They'd committed serious resources to this trap. Victoria's mind raced through options, each worse than the last. "Last chance," Crimson continued. "Stop now, surrender the cargo, and everyone goes home. Keep driving." The lights picked out armed figures moving into position. "Well, let's just say war dogs can bleed just like any other dog." Victoria's blood ran cold, but her voice remained steady. "You did your homework on my military record. Then you know what happened to the last person who threatened my dogs." A dark chuckle came through the radio. "That's what I'm counting on. Your emotional attachment makes you predictable. You'll stop rather than risk them. In fact, I bet they're right there in the cab with you, aren't they? Max and Duke, two of the most decorated military working dogs in recent history." Victoria's training kicked in. He was revealing too much. Too confident. This wasn't just about the cargo anymore. "You want my dogs," she realized. "The medical supplies are just a bonus." "Very good," Crimson replied. "Do you know what trained military dogs are worth on certain markets, especially ones with their combat record? Now, are we doing this the easy way, or..." His words cut off as Victoria's hand hit a series of switches. The canyon erupted in chaos as her truck's external lighting system, military-grade and far brighter than they'd expected, overwhelmed their carefully planned illumination trap. "Max, Duke, tactical positions." The dogs moved instantly, years of training taking over. Victoria threw her truck into a precise turn that would have been impossible for most drivers, using the terrain to her advantage. "All units, move in." Crimson's voice crackled with rage. "Don't let her." The rest was lost as Victoria triggered her truck's defense systems. Special smoke dispensers, perfectly legal but military-grade, filled the canyon with dense clouds. Her infrared lighting kicked in, useless for normal viewing, but perfect for dogs trained to work with night vision equipment. "Elena, Don, Plan Bravo, now!" Victoria's voice was steel as she executed a maneuver that had saved her life in that last Afghanistan ambush. Sometimes the best way through a trap was to spring it, on your own terms. The night erupted in chaos as Victoria. Parker reminded everyone why she and her dogs had been one of the most effective teams in military history. Crimson had done his homework, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd threatened her dogs. The real fight was about to begin. The canyon filled with chaos as Victoria's truck plowed through the smokescreen. Max and Duke's training kicked in instantly. Their barks precisely timed to create the illusion of movement throughout the confined space. In the confusion, bikes scattered, their riders unable to maintain formation. "She's making a break for the North Ridge," someone shouted. Exactly what Victoria wanted them to think. Negative. Crimson's voice cut through the chaos. "She's smarter than that. All units, converge on the western exit. Don't let those dogs get into position." Victoria smiled grimly. He really had studied her tactics, but not all of them. "Eleanor, status. Secondary package is in position." Eleanor's voice came through clearly on their secure channel. "They've got no idea they're chasing the wrong truck." Through the smoke, Victoria caught glimpses of armed figures trying to maintain a perimeter. Her truck's specialized lighting system, strobing in patterns proven to disorient without causing accidents, was creating exactly the confusion she needed. "Handler Parker," Crimson's voice carried a new edge of frustration. "You're only delaying the inevitable. We've got both exits covered." "Both exits?" Victoria muttered. "Don, Carol, what's he missing?" "Old mining tunnel." Don's voice crackled. "Back quarter-mile ahead on your 3 o'clock. They haven't spotted it yet. Surface looks unstable, but the reinforcements held last time I checked." Victoria's mind flashed back to a similar situation in Kandahar. Sometimes the most dangerous-looking route was the safest option. "Nash, we're about to give you probable cause. A lot of it. Just keep them busy for 3 more minutes." Nash responded. "We've ID'd Crimson. Former Special Forces discharged under investigation. Real name." "Tell me later." Victoria cut him off as she spun her wheel hard. The truck responded perfectly, decades of experience making the impossible look easy. Max and Duke braced themselves, understanding the maneuver from countless similar situations. There. A bike roared through the smoke, its rider raising what looked like a military-grade signal jammer. Victoria had been waiting for this. "Max, Duke, Patton Sierra!" The dogs responded instantly. Their barks changed, becoming more aggressive, more threatening. In the confined canyon space, the echoes made it impossible to pinpoint their location. More importantly, it covered the sound of Victoria's next move. The mining tunnel entrance looked like certain death, half collapsed, barely wide enough for her truck. But Victoria had learned long ago to trust Don's intel. The reinforcements held as her truck smashed through the cosmetic debris covering the entrance. "All units, do not let her..." Crimson's order cut off in a stream of curses as he realized what was happening. The sound of bikes revving filled the canyon as they scrambled to reposition. "Elena, execute Plan Bravo," Victoria commanded. In her mirrors, she saw the chaos escalate as Elena's truck, loaded with tracking devices and decoy cargo, burst through the smoke heading north. Half the bikes peeled off to pursue what they thought was the real target. "Don, Carol, status on the tunnel?" Victoria's truck plowed forward into the darkness, a specialized lighting system switching to low-intensity mode. "Stable for another 100 yards, Carol reported. "Then you'll hit the junction." "Right. Fork is collapsed for real. Left fork opens into Dixon's quarry." Victoria's hands were steady on the wheel as decades of training kicked in. This was no different from those night missions in Afghanistan, except for all the ways it was worse. "Nash, you still recording?" "Got everything," the sergeant confirmed. "Including Crimson's little speech about selling military dogs. That's a federal offense right there. We're moving in now." The tunnel groaned ominously as Victoria's truck cleared the junction. Behind her, bikes appeared in the darkness. Their Riders realizing too late that the right fork was a death trap. "Handler Parker," Crimson's voice held real anger now. "Those dogs are worth more than your life. Don't be stupid." Victoria keyed her radio one last time. "Hey, Crimson, you really should have done better research. Max and Duke weren't just any military working dogs. They were specifically trained for tunnel warfare." The dog's barks echoed through the confined space, creating a disorienting wall of sound. Victoria hit her brakes hard, executing a move that would have been suicidal without her truck's special modifications. The bikes behind her couldn't react in time. "All units, pull back." Crimson's order came too late. The tunnel erupted in confusion. As bikes collided, their riders unable to navigate in the chaos of sound and strobing lights. Victoria's truck burst out of the tunnel into Dixon's quarry. Behind her, the sound of sirens filled the air as Nash's task force finally moved in. They'd get some of the gang members, but she knew Crimson would escape. This round anyway. Elena, status on the decoy. "Led them right into the roadblock," Elena reported gleefully. "You should see their faces realizing they chased the wrong truck." Victoria allowed herself a small smile as she checked her cargo. Monitors. The medical supplies were secure, and she'd bought enough time for Nash to gather serious evidence. More importantly, she'd learned something crucial. Crimson wasn't just after the cargo. He wanted her dogs, which meant this wasn't over. "Don Carroll, we're going to need a new route to Houston." Victoria reached down to scratch behind Max's ears. Both dogs had performed perfectly, just like always. "And I need everything you..." "Confined on Crimson's military record." "Already on it," Don replied. "But Vic, there's something else you should know. The way he knew your tactics, your history. This goes deeper than we thought." Victoria nodded grimly. She'd suspected as much. Someone had been watching her, studying her patterns, maybe for months, which meant the real fight was just beginning. "Nash, you get all that?" "Loud and clear," the sergeant responded. "We've got 6 in custody, seized 3 trucks of contraband, and enough evidence to start rolling up their network. But Crimson and Venom both slipped away." "Let them run," Victoria said softly, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "They'll be back, and next time, we'll be ready." The quarry fell silent, except for the distant sound of sirens. Victoria Parker, former military working dog handler, looked at her loyal partners and allowed herself a moment of pride. They'd survived worse odds in Afghanistan. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. But first, she had medical supplies to deliver. Children were waiting, and Victoria Parker never failed a mission. Dawn broke over Don's garage as Victoria inspected her truck's reinforced panels. The tunnel escape had left its marks, but the vital systems remained intact. Max and Duke patrolled the perimeter, their training evident in every precise movement. 3 cracked panels, bent bumper, and your right fog lights shot, Don announced, sliding out from under the truck. But the important stuff held. Military grade doesn't come cheap, but it pays off. Victoria nodded, running her hand along. A deep scratch in the driver's side door. "How long to get her roadworthy?" 2 hours, tops. Carol's got breakfast ready and Nash is on his way with new intel. The radio on Don's workbench crackled. "This is Elena. You're gonna want to hear..." "This, Vic? Found something weird in those shipping manifests." Victoria wiped grease from her hands. "Patch into the secure channel. Wait for Nash." Inside the truck stop's office, Carol had transformed their break room into a tactical operations center. Maps covered one wall, shipping routes marked in different colors. A police scanner hummed quietly in the corner. "They hit 3 other trucks last month," Carol said, pointing to red X's on the map, "all carrying similar cargo. But here's the thing, they knew exactly when and where to hit each one." "Inside information," Victoria muttered. Her mind flashed back to her last deployment, when they'd discovered a leak in their own unit. Good people had died before they'd plugged that leak. The door opened, admitting Nash and Elena. The sergeant looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes were alert. "Got Crimson's file. You're not going to like it." "How bad?" "Thomas Reeves," Nash said, dropping a folder on the table. "Former Special Forces, specialized in K-9 operations. Discharged 3 years ago after an investigation into missing military equipment, specifically equipment related to dog training." Victoria's blood ran cold. He wasn't after the medical supplies at all. That was just cover. "Gets worse," Elena added, spreading out paperwork. "Every truck they've hit was driven by someone with military experience. They're building a pattern, gathering intel on routes. And drivers found this in one of the bikes we seized," Nash continued, placing a small device on the table. "Military-grade tracking beacon. They've been tagging trucks, following their routes." Victoria's jaw tightened. "How long have they been watching me?" "Based on these manifests?" Elena pointed to dates. "At least 2 months. They know your regular routes, your stops, your schedule." "But they didn't know about her modifications," Don interjected, "or her full tactical capabilities. That's why last night went sideways for them." Carol's voice cut through their discussion. "Movement on the highway. 3 bikes heading east. Looks like they're running reconnaissance." Victoria moved to the window, Max and Duke flanking her instantly. The bikers were staying just within sight, making no effort to hide. "They're sending a message, letting us know they're still watching." "I've got roadblocks set up," Nash said. "State police are on alert, but if Crimson's running their tactical operations now, they'll find a way through," Victoria finished. "He's got the training for it." She studied the maps again, mind working through scenarios. "Elena, those other drivers they hit, any of them still running routes?" "Most quit after being robbed. 2 transferred to different regions. One's in the hospital. Truck ran off. The road under suspicious circumstances." Victoria's hand instinctively went to Max's head. The dog leaned into her touch, sensing her tension. "They're eliminating potential threats, cleaning up loose ends, which makes you their biggest threat," Nash pointed out. "You're the first one who's fought back effectively, and now they know about your military background." Don's expression darkened. "They'll change tactics, hit harder next time, maybe go after the dogs," Victoria said quietly. "That's what this is really about. Crimson's building something, a unit of military-trained dogs and handlers, the medical supplies, the robberies. That's just financing." Elena swore softly in Spanish. "Those manifests I found, 6 other shipments scheduled this week, all carrying similar cargo, all driven by veterans. They're not just targeting the shipments," Victoria realized. "They're recruiting or eliminating, testing each driver to see who's useful." Nash's radio crackled. "Sergeant, we've got a problem. Just got word from dispatch. Someone accessed Parker's military records this morning from inside the department." The room fell silent. Victoria shared a look with Nash. They both knew what this meant. The leak went higher than they'd thought. "We need to move," Victoria said, checking her watch. "Those supplies still have to reach Houston. Children are waiting for them." "It's a trap," Elena protested. "They'll be expecting you to continue the route," Victoria smiled grimly. "Good, because we're going to give them exactly what they expect, just not the way they expect it." Don raised an eyebrow. "You've got that look, the one you had in the tunnel. Crimson wants to play psychological warfare?" Victoria checked her dog's tactical vests. "Let's show him what psychological warfare really looks like. Elena, how good are you at driving my truck?" Understanding dawned on their faces as Victoria outlined her plan. It was risky, possibly crazy, but it had one advantage. It was exactly the kind of plan someone with Victoria's training would never attempt, unless that's exactly what she wanted them to think. The Arizona sun climbed higher as they finalized the details. Out on the highway, the reconnaissance bikes maintained their vigil, watching, waiting. They thought they were the hunters. Victoria Parker was about to remind them what it felt like to be the prey. The morning heat rippled across the highway as Elena pulled Victoria's truck onto the main road. From a distance, with Max and Duke visible in the cab, it looked exactly like Victoria's normal operation. The dog's realistic decoys, borrowed from the police K9 training facility, completed the illusion. "Target is moving," one of the Sand Scorpion's scouts reported into his radio. "Handler and both dogs confirmed in vehicle." In the back of Don's unmarked service truck 5 miles away, Victoria smiled. Max and Duke sat alertly beside her, their real tactical vests upgraded with new equipment. "They're buying it. Elena, keep it casual. You're just another day on the road." "Copy that," Elena responded through their secure channel. 3 bikes maintaining distance. They're being careful after last night. Victoria checked her tablet. Watching multiple tracking signals. After discovering the Sand Scorpion's surveillance tactics, they'd turned the tables. Every suspicious vehicle they'd spotted now carried a discreet tracker of its own. "Nash, what's the status on our friend?" "Crimson's got a warehouse outside of Flagstaff," Nash reported. "Just confirmed. It's registered to a company that specializes in private security dog training. They're not even trying to hide it anymore." Don's voice cut in. "Got movement at Junction 54. 4 more bikes joining the escort. They're boxing Elena in." Victoria's mind flashed back to similar escort missions in Afghanistan. They're pushing her toward their trap. "Good. Elena, time to show them what you learned about evasive driving." "With pleasure," Elena replied. The truck smoothly changed lanes, its movements precise enough to match Victoria's known driving patterns. "Sergeant Nash," a new voice crackled over the police band, "got those records you requested. Military working dogs reported stolen in 3 states over the past year. All cases unsolved." Victoria's jaw tightened. "He's building an army, training dogs and handlers for private military contracts." "Illegal as hell," Nash confirmed. "But highly profitable. Some of these dogs are worth—" "Movement!" Carol's voice cut in. "New players on the field. Black SUVs coming in from the North Access Road. Not our usual bikers." Victoria peered through the specially tinted windows of Don's truck. The SUVs were professional, unmarked, but moving with military precision. "Crimson's bringing in his real team. The Sand Scorpions are just muscle. Got eyes on Venom," Don reported. "He doesn't look happy about the new arrivals. There's some kind of argument happening." Victoria watched the tracker signals converging. Tension in the ranks. "We can use that. Elena, prepare for Phase 2. Ready when you are. These guys have no idea who they're really dealing with." In the distance, Victoria caught glimpses of the black SUVs moving into position. Their driving pattern was familiar. She'd seen it in military convoys. "Don, get ready. We're about to—" "Contact!" Elena's voice was sharp. "They're making their move earlier than expected. SUVs trying to force me onto the access road." Victoria's tactical mind raced. "Crimson's not falling for the decoy. He's testing it. Elena, execute maneuver Charlie. Let's see how committed they are." The truck suddenly swerved, executing a perfect defensive driving maneuver. Through her binoculars, Victoria saw the SUVs react with professional precision. But the bikes, they hesitated. "There's our opening," Victoria said quietly. "The professional, the team and the gang aren't coordinating well. Nash?" "Got it. Moving interceptors into position. But Vic, if Crimson spots the trap—" "He won't," Victoria assured him. "Because he's about to have a bigger problem. Don, Carol, execute Phase 3. Across their tactical network, carefully planned chaos erupted. Carol's connections in the trucking community sprang into action. Dozens of independent drivers, suddenly changing routes, creating a web of movement that would confuse any surveillance. "SUVs are breaking formation," Don reported. "They're trying to maintain visual contact with Elena." Victoria checked her watch. Perfect timing. "Elena, find your exit point. Time to show them why you won your class's Defensive Driving Award." "What the hell?" A sand scorpion's voice crackled over their monitored channel. "Where'd all these trucks come from?" Victoria smiled as she watched the confusion unfold. Professional military units hated exactly what was happening. Loss of control, too many variables, unclear lines of sight. But for the sand scorpions, this was even worse. Their usual intimidation tactics were useless in this chaos. Crimson's going to figure it out, Nash warned. "He's too good not to." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," Victoria replied. She signaled to Max and Duke, and both dogs moved silently into position. "Because when he does..." A new voice cut through their tactical channel, Crimson, sounding genuinely angry for the first time. "All units, we've been played. The dogs in the truck are decoys. Find that handler. She has to be..." His voice cut off as he realized his tactical channel had been compromised. Victoria keyed her radio one last time. "Told you you should have done better research, Crimson. Real military dogs don't just sit quietly during a pursuit." Through her binoculars, Victoria watched the SUVs scatter, professional discipline crumbling as they realized how completely they'd been outmaneuvered. The sand scorpions, already unhappy about the outsiders, began breaking formation. "Elena." "Get clear," Victoria commanded. "Phase 4 begins in 3 minutes. "You sure about this next part?" Nash asked quietly. Victoria checked her dog's tactical gear one last time. "Crimson wants to see what military working dogs can really do. Let's give him a demonstration he'll never forget." The Arizona sun hung high as Victoria Parker prepared to turn the hunters into the hunted. She'd let them think they were in control, let them think they had the upper hand. Now it was time to remind them why she and her dogs had been one of the most effective teams in military history. The real game was about to begin. Victoria moved silently through the abandoned warehouse. District, Max and Duke flanking her position. Their paw steps were silent on the concrete. This wasn't their first stealth operation. Through her earpiece, she monitored the chaos unfolding across the highway. 3 SUVs still pursuing the decoy, Don reported from his observation post. Rest of them are scattered, searching the industrial zone. Sand scorpions are breaking into small groups. Looks like Venom's losing control of his people. "Target building ahead," Victoria whispered. "Max, Duke, search pattern Delta." The dogs moved with practiced precision, checking corners and blind spots just as they'd done hundreds of times in combat zones. Nash's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Vic, got something you need to hear. Found Crimson's military records, the uncensored version. He wasn't just discharged, he was running an illegal training program, selling military-trained dogs to private military contractors." "Any movement on the roof?" Victoria asked Carol, who was monitoring thermal imaging feeds from a nearby position. 2 guards, northwest corner. They're scorpions, not professionals. Sloppy patrol pattern. Victoria smiled grimly. Crimson's mistake was mixing trained operators with undisciplined gang members. It created weak points in his security. She'd seen the same thing in Afghanistan when regular forces tried to coordinate with local militias. "Elena, status?" "Still leading the SUVs on a merry chase," Eleanor reported, satisfaction evident in her voice. "They haven't figured out the dogs are decoys yet. These guys might be professional, but they're not too bright." Victoria reached the warehouse's side entrance. Max's ears perked forward. He'd caught a scent. Duke's low growl confirmed it. "Someone was inside, close to the door. Movement in the main lot," Don warned. "Crimson just arrived. 3 bikes with him. He's figured something out." Victoria checked her watch, right on schedule. "Nash, your people ready?" "SWAT's on standby, but we need probable cause to move in. Without hard evidence of the trafficking operation..." "You'll have it," Victoria promised. She signaled to her dogs, and they took up breach positions beside the door. Just like old times. The door's lock was cheap, clearly not up to Crimson standards. The sand scorpions corner cutting, would cost them. Victoria moved inside, dogs clearing corners with practiced efficiency. The warehouse's interior was dimly lit, but she could hear activity from the loading bay. "Got eyes on the main floor," she whispered. "They're loading crates, dog crates." "That's it," Nash replied. "That's our probable cause. Hold position, we're moving in." "Negative." Victoria's voice was steel. "Crimson spooks, we lose everything. Elite dogs like these are worth millions on the black market. He's got buyers lined up, which means he's got proof of the operation somewhere." "In there," Nash finished. "Documents, contracts, shipping records." A voice carried from the loading bay, Crimson arguing with someone. "I don't care what Venom thinks. Once this shipment moves, we're done with the Sand Scorpions. They're a liability." Victoria moved. Closer, staying in the shadows. Max and Duke followed, their training making them nearly invisible in the dim light. Through gaps in the crates, she could see men loading what looked like medical supply boxes, the perfect cover for moving specialized equipment. "Sir?" One of the professional operators approached Crimson. "We've lost visual on the handlers. Truck. Team 2 reports the dogs haven't moved or reacted during the entire pursuit." Crimson's reaction was instant. "Pull everyone back, now! It's a decoy." Victoria's voice carried across the warehouse as she stepped into view, Max and Duke at her sides. "Pretty sloppy, Crimson. The real handler would have spotted your surveillance weeks ago." "Oh wait, I did." The warehouse erupted into motion. Professional operators reached for weapons while Sand Scorpions scrambled for cover. But Crimson just smiled. "Handler Parker, I was wondering when you'd make your move." He gestured, and his men held their positions. "I have to admit, using your truck as a decoy, that was inspired. Learned that trick in Kandahar, didn't you?" "You're slipping, Crimson," Victoria replied, her dogs moving to cover her flanks. "Mixing professionals with street thugs? That's amateur hour. But then, you always did cut corners in training, didn't you? That's why they kicked you out." His face darkened. "They kicked me out because they didn't understand the potential. Do you know what a properly trained military dog is worth? What they can do with the right motivation?" "I know exactly what they can do." Victoria's voice was cold. "I also know the difference between a handler and a trafficker." Outside, sirens began to wail, Nash's teams moving into position. But Victoria knew Crimson would have an escape route planned. The question was, what would he sacrifice to use it? "Last chance," Victoria offered. "Surrender the dogs, the documentation, walk away in cuffs. Or find out why Max and Duke have the highest success rate in their unit's history." Crimson's laugh was genuine. "You think I came unprepared for your dogs?" He reached slowly into his jacket. "Let me show you what real motivation looks like." The next few seconds would change everything. But Victoria Parker had learned long ago, sometimes the most important fights weren't about who was stronger, but who was willing to sacrifice more for what they believed in, and no one believed in their dogs more than she did. Crimson's hand emerged from his jacket, holding what looked like a simple remote control. Victoria's blood ran cold. She recognized the military-grade sonic device designed to disorient trained dogs. But before he could activate it, chaos erupted from an unexpected direction. "Boss, we got problems." A Sand Scorpion burst through the side door. "Venom's pulling his men out. Says you're burning us." The warehouse dissolved into confusion. Professional operators maintained their positions while gang members began breaking ranks. Victoria seized the moment, giving Max and Duke their attack. Signal. The dogs moved like shadows, years of training evident in every motion. "Control your people," Crimson shouted at his lieutenant. "The handler is the target. Don't let those dogs..." His words cut off as the lights went out. Don's voice crackled in Victoria's earpiece. "Power grids down. Carol's got the backup generators locked out." Victoria smiled in the darkness. This was their element. Max and Duke. had run hundreds of night operations, their other senses more than making up for the lack of vision. The sound of confusion and colliding bodies filled the warehouse as untrained gang members panicked. Nash, status on the perimeter. Victoria moved silently through the chaos, her dogs clearing her path. SWAT's in position, but Vic, Venoms. Crew just hit one of Crimson's weapons caches on the east side. This is about to get ugly. Through her night vision gear, Victoria watched the professional operators trying to maintain formation while dealing with fleeing gang members. Crimson stood his ground, sonic device ready, but he'd lost his tactical advantage. "Handler Parker," his voice carried across the darkness. "You think this changes anything? I've got buyers waiting, military-grade dogs, properly motivated. Do you know what that's worth?" "More than your freedom," Victoria countered, her voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. "An old trick learned in urban warfare training. Those contracts you're holding, pretty damaging evidence." Burst of gunfire from outside made everyone duck. Elena's voice cut through the tactical channel. "Scorpion's and Crimson's men are shooting at each other in the parking lot. This whole thing's falling apart." Victoria moved closer to Crimson's position, Max and Duke flanking wide. "Your operations..." "Burning down, Crimson. Venom just figured out you were using his gang as disposable muscle." "You think I care about some street gang?" Crimson snarled. "The dogs were always the real product. Pure military training, no oversight, no regulations." He raised the sonic device. "Let me show you what proper motivation looks like." But Victoria had been counting on this. As Crimson activated the device, Max and Duke didn't even flinch. His face registered confusion, then understanding. "Different frequency," Victoria explained, allowing herself a grim smile. "First thing I did after learning about you was modify their training. You're not the only one who keeps up with military tech." The warehouse doors burst open as SWAT teams moved in, their entry covered by the chaos outside. Crimson's professional operators began falling back to defensive positions, but they were caught between police and angry sand scorpions. "It's over," Victoria called out. "Venom's crew is hitting all your stockpiles. Nash's team has your contracts. The dogs you were planning to sell, already secured by state police." Crimson's laugh was harsh. "You think this was my only operation? There are always more dogs, more handlers." He reached for something else in his jacket. Max and Duke moved before Victoria could give the command. Years of training telling them exactly what that motion meant. They hit Crimson from both sides, taking him down with professional precision, not attacking, restraining, just as they'd been trained. "Don't," Victoria advised, as Crimson's hand closed around his backup weapon. "They may be properly trained, but they're also properly motivated. The difference is they choose to serve." The warehouse filled with SWAT team members as Nash coordinated the operation. Outside, the sound of gunfire was dying down as police contained the conflict between Crimson's men and the Sand Scorpions. "Victoria!" Elena's voice carried urgency. "We got a problem. Some of Crimson's buyers just showed up. Professional military, contractors, heavy hardware. Warehouse is secure," Nash reported, "but we've got vehicles approaching from the north. Looks like someone called in their insurance policy." Victoria checked her dogs' positions. They held Crimson expertly, waiting for her command. "How many vehicles?" 4 SUVs, definitely military contractors. These aren't amateurs like the Scorpions." Victoria's mind raced through options. The evidence was secured, Crimson was caught. But now they faced trained professionals who wouldn't give up millions in potential profits easily. "Nash, get your people clear," she commanded. "Elena, implement contingency plan Delta. Don, Carol, I need eyes on those SUVs." "What are you thinking?" Nash asked, recognizing her tone. Victoria checked her tactical gear as Max and Duke maintained their hold on Crimson. "I'm thinking it's time to show these contractors why military working dogs earned their reputation. The hard way." The approaching vehicle's headlights cut through the warehouse windows. Victoria Parker, former military working dog handler, prepared to remind everyone why she and her dogs had been the best in their unit. The night was far from over. The military contractors' SUVs formed a perimeter around the warehouse with practiced precision. Victoria watched through her tactical gear as armed professionals took up positions. These weren't gangsters or thugs, but highly trained operators. 4 teams, 3 men each, Don reported through the tactical channel. They're running a standard containment pattern. These guys are former special forces. Victoria keyed her radio while keeping her eyes on the nearest entry point. Nash, is the evidence secure? Affirmative. SWAT's got Crimson's contracts and buyer lists, but we're pinned down in the north section. A new voice cut through their channel, one of the contractors. Attention police units, we represent a private security firm with legitimate business interests. Stand down and withdraw. This is your only warning. Victoria noticed Max and Duke's subtle shift in posture. The dog sensed something off about the contractor's movement pattern. She'd learned to trust their instincts years ago. Elena. Status? In position with 3 other trucks. Don's friends came through. We've got the whole trucker network ready to move. Victoria smiled grimly. Time to remind these professionals why military working dogs were considered force multipliers. Nash, on my signal, have your team fall. Back to the secondary position. Don, Carol, initiate protocol Echo. Through her night vision, Victoria watched the contractors tightening their perimeter. Their movement was textbook perfect, which made it predictable. She trained against teams like this, knew their playbook. Handler Parker, the contractor's voice again. We know you're monitoring this channel. Let's be professional about this. The dogs, the evidence, and Crimson. That's all we want. Walk. Weigh clean with a generous compensation package. Victoria keyed her radio one last time. Here's my counteroffer. She gave Max and Duke their signal, and chaos erupted. The warehouse's remaining lights exploded in a coordinated burst, plunging everything into darkness. But before the contractors could switch to night vision, powerful truck headlights blazed. From every direction, Elena had positioned the trucks perfectly, creating a disorienting wall of light. Multiple targets, a contractor shouted. They're using the loading bays. His voice cut off as Max and Duke implemented their training. The dogs moved like shadows through the chaos, not attacking, but creating strategic chaos. Years of military operations had taught them exactly how to disrupt professional units. Carol, status on the north exit? Victoria moved through the darkness, coordinating with her dogs through practiced signals. 3 trucks in position, waiting on your mark. Victoria spotted a contractor team trying to maintain formation. Perfect. Max, Duke, Patton, Sierra. The dogs responded instantly, their barks echoing through the warehouse in a way that made their position impossible to pinpoint. Ma'am, one of the contractors called out, you're interfering with a private security operation. These dogs are worth millions to the right buyers. Don't throw away. They're not products. Victoria cut him off, her voice carrying across the chaos. They're soldiers, partners. But you people never understood that, did you? A burst of gunfire from outside signaled new complications. Elena's voice crackled through. Heads up! Venom's crew just engaged the contractor's backup team. Victoria's mind raced through options. The Sand Scorpions attacking the contractors created an opportunity, but also raised the risk of collateral damage. Time to end this. All units, execute maneuver Delta, she commanded. Instantly, the truck drivers responded. Engines roared as massive rigs began moving in coordination, using their size to cut off tactical positions and escape routes. They're boxing us in, one contractor realized too late. Fall back to Max and Duke struck at that moment, targeting equipment rather than people. Night vision goggles went flying, radio cords snapped, tactical gear scattered. The contractors found themselves being systematically stripped of their advantages by dogs who'd done this hundreds of times in combat zones. "Last chance," Victoria called out. "Surrender now, or learn why military working dogs have a 98% effectiveness rate against special operations teams." "You think this ends here?" The lead contractor's voice carried real anger now. "Our clients, your clients, are already being investigated," Nash cut in, his voice triumphant. "These contracts Crimson was holding, they're going to make fascinating reading for certain three-letter agencies." Victoria moved to a new position, Max and Duke flanking her perfectly. Don status on the perimeter. Truckers have every exit blocked. Carol's got eyes on their backup vehicles. They're not going anywhere. The contractors realized their position was untenable. Professional operators knew when a tactical situation had turned against them. One by one, they began standing down. Handler. "Parker!" The lead contractor tried one last time. "Think about what you're throwing away. These dogs, with the right training program—" "They have the right training program," Victoria interrupted. "They have the right motivation. The difference is they choose to serve, something you mercenaries never understood." The sound of police helicopters filled the air as state tactical units moved in. The contractors, their position compromised, and their mission failed, had no choice but to surrender. "Area secured," Nash reported. "Evidence protected. You did it, Vic." But Victoria wasn't celebrating yet. "Where's Crimson?" "Gone," Eleanor reported grimly. "Slipped out during the chaos. But Venom's crew is in pursuit. Seems they took his betrayal personally." Victoria checked her tactical gear, while Max and Duke maintained their alert status. "He won't get far, not with what we found here." She turned to Nash. "How solid is the evidence?" "Rock solid. International contracts, buyer lists, training, protocols, and he was building a global operation. Military dogs and handlers, bought and sold like equipment." The night air filled with the sound of sirens as more police units arrived. Victoria knelt between Max and Duke, checking them for any injuries. As always, they'd performed flawlessly. "Vic," Elena's voice carried urgency. "Got reports of Crimson heading toward the state line. He's got a backup plan." Victoria stood, her decision made. "Nash, can you handle things here?" "Go," the sergeant replied. "Stop him before he can activate his wider network. These contracts show operations in 3 countries." Victoria clicked her radio twice, a signal Max and Duke recognized instantly. Both dogs moved to ready positions, prepared for pursuit operations. "Don, Carol, I need transport. Fast." "Already arranged," Don replied. "Carol's got a vehicle waiting at the north exit, modified for dog transport." Victoria Parker, former military working dog handler, prepared for one final pursuit. Crimson had escaped, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd threatened her dogs. The night wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. The modified SUV Carol provided handled the mountain roads like it was born for them. Victoria sat focused behind the wheel, Max and Duke alert in their specialized rear compartment. The dogs' training allowed them to maintain perfect balance, even as the vehicle took sharp turns at high speed. "Got confirmation on Crimson's vehicle," Elena's voice came through the tactical channel. "Black Range Rover, heavily modified. 3 of Venom's riders are keeping visual contact." Victoria checked her mirrors. The desert night was clear, stars providing natural illumination along the winding road. "Nash, any word on his destination?" "Those and contracts we seized. They mention a private airfield near the state line. Carol's working on the exact location." The radio crackled as a new voice joined their channel, Venom himself. "Handler, my boys spotted your target heading toward Devils. Backbone Ridge. There's an old mining road leads to a plateau. Could land a small plane up there." "Can we trust this intel?" Victoria asked Nash. "Confirmed," the sergeant replied. Satellite imagery shows recent vehicle activity in that area. Looks like Crimson's had this escape route planned for a while. Victoria pressed the accelerator, feeling the SUV respond. Behind her, Max and Duke remained perfectly still, conserving energy. They knew pursuit operations could last hours. Vic, got something else. Don's voice carried tension. That airfield? It's registered to a shell company connected to private military contractors, same ones who tried to hit the warehouse. He's got a whole network, Victoria realized. The Sand Scorpions, the contractors, the trafficking operation, it's all connected. Through her night vision gear, Victoria caught glimpses of motorcycles moving parallel to her route. Venom's crew was maintaining their pursuit of Crimson, but staying clear of direct engagement. Handler, Venom's voice again. My boys said Crimson's, carrying something. Metal case, military grade, could be more evidence. Or something worse, Victoria muttered. Nash, working on it. But those contracts mentioned training equipment being moved through specialized channels. Could be anything. From control devices to weapons, Victoria finished. Her mind flashed back to similar pursuits in combat zones. Elena, status on the highway patrol. They're blocking all major routes, but these mountain roads, there's too many to cover. Victoria's tactical training kicked in as she analyzed the terrain. He's trying to get to higher ground, better visibility, more escape options. She clicked her radio twice, a signal to her dogs. Both Max and Duke shifted position, ready for deployment. Movement ahead, one of Venom's riders called out. Target vehicle just turned onto the mining road. Victoria saw the turn, barely. Visible, practically a goat trail, but her modified SUV could handle it. Don, Carol, need intel on that plateau. Satellite feed shows it's about 2 miles up, Carol responded. Wide enough for a small plane, but Vic, the road gets rough. Really rough. Good thing we came prepared. Victoria downshifted, handling the steep incline with practiced skill. Nash, can you get air support? Negative. Weather's turning bad up there. Helicopters can't risk those conditions. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the rugged landscape. Victoria caught glimpses of Crimson's Range Rover ahead, the vehicle moving with professional precision. He hadn't survived this long by being careless. Handler. Venom's voice carried unexpected respect. My boys can flank him on the ridgeline, slow him down. Victoria considered the offer. The Sand Scorpions might be criminals, but they were skilled riders. And right now, she needed every advantage. Do it, she commanded, but no direct engagement. He's too dangerous. Vic, Eleanor's urgency cut through the channel. Just got word from a trucker at the state line. Small plane landed at that plateau 20 minutes ago. Engines still hot. Victoria's jaw tightened. His extraction's already waiting. Nash, can't get police units there in time. You're on your own. The SUV powered up the mining road, suspension handling the brutal terrain. Through her tactical gear, Victoria spotted Venom's riders moving into position along the ridge. They were good. She had to give them that. Handler, Venom called out. We got movement on the plateau. Multiple vehicles, professional setup. Victoria processed the information. Crimson wasn't just running, he was heading toward a fully prepared escape operation. Max, Duke, ready positions. Both dogs responded instantly, their training evident in every motion. Vic. Nash's voice was grim. Those contracts, they're not just about dog trafficking. He's been selling complete packages, dogs, handlers, tactical data, everything a private military contractor would need to build their own canine units. Without oversight, Victoria added, without regulations, her hands tightened on the wheel, without caring about the dogs. Lightning flashed again, closer now. The plateau loomed ahead, its flat surface barely visible in the darkness. Victoria could make out the small plane, its engines idling. Multiple SUVs surrounded it, more contractors providing security. "Handler," Venom spoke quietly. "My boys are in position. Whatever you're planning, we got your back." Victoria. Parker allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes you found allies in the strangest places. "Nash, you getting all this?" "Recording everything." "But Vic, that's a professional extraction team up there. Military trained, well equipped." "Good," Victoria replied, checking her tactical gear one last time. "Then they'll understand exactly what they're dealing with when they see us coming." Max and Duke remained perfectly still, but their posture had changed subtly. They could sense the approaching confrontation. Years of combat operations had taught them to read every situation. "All units," Victoria commanded, her voice carrying the authority of countless military operations. "Execute Plan Echo. Let's remind these contractors why military working dogs earned their reputation." The night air crackled with tension as Victoria. Parker prepared for one final confrontation. Crimson had resources, equipment, and trained operators, but he'd forgotten the most important lesson from military service. It's not about the equipment. It's about the bond between handler and dog. And that was something no amount of money could buy. The plateau waited above as thunder rolled across the mountains. The real storm, however, was about to break loose on that flat expanse of rock. And Victoria Parker intended to be right at its center. Victoria's SUV crested the plateau just as lightning split the sky. The scene before her was exactly what she'd expected. Crimson's Range Rover parked near a sleek private plane, surrounded by tactical teams taking defensive positions. Professional operators moved with military precision, their weapons trained on all approach vectors. 7 operators, Dawn reported through her tactical channel. Standard private military contractors gear. They're running a Mark IV defense pattern. Victoria positioned her vehicle carefully, noting every detail. Max and Duke remained silent in their compartment, but their posture had shifted to full alert status. They recognized pre-combat conditions from hundreds of similar operations. "Handler!" Crimson's voice carried across the plateau. "Last chance to make a deal. These dogs, your experience, think about what we could accomplish." Through her night vision, Victoria spotted Venom's riders taking positions along the ridgeline. The Sand Scorpions might be criminals, but they knew how to follow tactical direction. "Nash, you getting this?" Victoria kept her voice low, evaluating. "Multiple approach angles?" "Affirmative. Got satellite confirmation. That plane's registered to a private military corporation. They're serious players, international connections." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the metal case, crimson. Carried. Victoria's trained eye recognized military-grade storage equipment, the kind used for sensitive tactical gear. It's not just about selling dogs, Victoria realized. That case, he's got something bigger planned. Elena's voice cut through. "Vic, got truckers blocking both access roads. Whatever happens up there, he's not getting down by vehicle." Victoria clicked her radio twice, a signal to Max and Duke. Both dogs shifted silently, ready for deployment. Years of combat operations had taught them to read every nuance of a tactical situation. "Last warning," Crimson called out. "I've got trained operators here, Handler. They won't hesitate like those gang members." Victoria's response was to flash her high beams once, a signal to Venom's crew. Instantly, motorcycle engines roared to life around the plateau's perimeter. The contractors shifted nervously, their formations spreading thin to cover multiple threats. "You're not getting off this mountain, Crimson." Victoria projected her voice with practiced authority. "Those contracts we found, every law enforcement agency in 3 states is moving on your network right now." A dark chuckle carried across the open space. "You think this was just about selling dogs? That case you're so interested in. Want to know what's in it? Multiple thermal signatures moving on the ridge. Don reported urgently. More contractors coming up the backside of the mountain. Victoria's tactical mind raced through options. The situation was deteriorating, but that might work to her advantage. Chaos was something she and her dogs had trained for extensively. Inside this case, Crimson continued, is enough tactical data to revolutionize private military canine operations. Training protocols, handler psychology, combat effectiveness metrics, everything needed to create perfect military working dogs. And the right buyers are very interested. You're selling military secrets, Victoria said flatly. That's why you needed the medical supply cover. The dog trafficking was just a bonus. Finally figured it out, did you? Crimson's voice carried genuine amusement. Those contracts you seized, worthless. The real data's right here. And in 10 minutes, it's leaving U.S. airspace. Victoria noticed Max and Duke's subtle shift in posture. The dogs had picked up something. Movement in the contractors' formation. Their training was telling them something she couldn't see yet. Nash. Status on backup. State police are 15 minutes out, but Vic, we just got confirmation. That plane, its flight plan shows a destination with no extradition treaty. Thunder rolled across the plateau as Victoria evaluated her options. The contractors were professionals, but they were also mercenaries. Their loyalty extended only as far as their payment. Handler, Venom's voice came through her tactical channel. My boys are in position, say the word. Victoria made her decision. All units execute pattern Delta. Elena, ready with the truckers? They're gonna earn their hazard pay tonight. Victoria's hand moved to her door handle. Max, Duke, tactical positions. The dogs responded instantly, years of training taking over. Nash, you recording? Everything. But Vic, those contractors won't hesitate to use lethal force. Neither. Will we? Victoria's voice was steel. Don, Carol, initiate blackout protocol. The plateau exploded into chaos as every vehicle's lights suddenly blazed at maximum intensity. The contractors, their night vision equipment working against them, were momentarily blinded. That's when Victoria made her move. Max and Duke deployed like shadows, their movements perfectly coordinated after countless combat operations. They didn't attack. They didn't need to. Their presence, their precision, their obvious training caused exactly the disruption Victoria had counted on. The dogs, a contractor shouted. They're flanking our position. Crimson's voice cut through the chaos. Hold formation, don't let them. His words were drowned out by the roar of motorcycles as Venom's crew executed their part of the plan. The Sand Scorpions rode full throttle around the plateau's perimeter, creating a wall of noise and movement that further disrupted the contractors' coordination. Handler! Crimson's anger was evident now. You have no idea what you're interfering with. These protocols, they're worth millions to the right buyers. Victoria moved through the chaos like a ghost, her own training matching her dog's precision. That's your mistake, Crimson. You think everything has a price tag. Lightning illuminated the scene in stark bursts. Contractors trying to maintain formation, motorcycles circling like wolves, and two military-trained German shepherds demonstrating exactly why they'd been the best in their unit. Victoria, Elena's urgent voice, got movement on the lower road. Looks like his backup plan is moving in. Thunder crashed as Victoria Parker faced a decision. The plateau had become a tactical nightmare, but that's exactly what she'd trained for. Sometimes the most important battles weren't about strength or numbers. They were about proving what was truly valuable. And Victoria was about to remind everyone why military working dogs were considered the most effective force multipliers in modern combat operations. The night was about to get very interesting indeed. Thunder crashed overhead as Victoria's tactical plan unfolded. Max and Duke moved like liquid shadows through the chaos, their advanced training evident in every calculated movement. The contractors, despite their professional training, found themselves constantly adjusting positions to counter dogs they couldn't effectively track. 3 vehicles coming up the back road, Elena reported urgently. Heavily armored. Military. Grade. Victoria processed the information while maintaining visual contact with her dogs. Nash, status on those reinforcements? Confirmed PMC vehicles, the sergeant responded. Same company that tried to hit the warehouse. These guys are playing for keeps. Crimson's voice cut through the storm. You see, Handler, you're not just fighting me anymore. There are organizations with billions invested in this technology. Stand down now, or... His threat was cut short as Max and Duke executed a perfectly timed distraction maneuver. The dogs' synchronized movements forced the contractors to split their attention, creating gaps in their defensive formation. Vic! Don's voice carried tension. Thermal imaging shows more teams moving up both sides of the mountain. They're trying to box you in. Victoria clicked her radio twice, a signal her dogs recognized instantly. Their position shifted, maintaining maximum tactical advantage while conserving energy. This was what they'd trained for in countless combat operations. Handler. Venom's voice came through clearly. My boys spotted heavy weapons in those backup vehicles. This ain't just about dogs anymore. It never was, Victoria replied, her mind racing through options. Nash, that case Crimson's carrying. What exactly are we dealing with? Based on those contracts, advanced military training protocols, classified tactical data, everything needed to create private military canine units without oversight. In the wrong hands, lightning illuminated the plateau again, revealing the professional precision of the contractors' movements. They were good, but they'd never faced a properly trained military dog team operating at full capacity. All units, execute pattern echo, Victoria commanded. Instantly, her improvised task force responded. Venom's riders adjusted their positions, while Elena's truckers coordinated their movements below. You're surrounded, Handler, Crimson called out as his backup teams began arriving. These aren't gang members or local police. These are professional military operators with orders to recover that tactical data at any cost. Victoria allowed herself a grim smile. Max, Duke, initiate sequence Sierra. The dogs responded instantly, years of training taking over. Their movement patterns shifted, becoming more aggressive, more unpredictable. Multiple targets breaking formation, Don reported. The contractors can't maintain their defensive positions. Whatever you're doing, it's working. Through her tactical gear, Victoria watched the chaos unfold exactly as planned. The contractors were trained to deal with conventional threats. But nothing about this situation was conventional. Handler, Crimson's voice carried real anger now. Those dogs are worth millions. The tactical data in this case, billions. Don't throw away. That's your mistake, Victoria cut him off. Her voice carrying across the plateau. You think everything has a price, but some things, loyalty, trust, the bond between handler and dog, those things aren't for sale. The storm intensified as Victoria's words hung in the air. Lightning revealed the full tactical situation. Undie contractors trying to maintain formation, Venom's riders creating strategic chaos, and 2 military-trained German shepherds demonstrating exactly why they'd been the elite of their unit. Vic! Elena's urgent call. Those armored vehicles. They're carrying some kind of electronic warfare equipment. Whatever they're planning, Victoria's tactical mind processed the new threat. Nash, how long until state police arrive? 10 minutes, but with this weather. Thunder crashed as Victoria made her decision. Sometimes the most dangerous option was the only option. Max, Duke, Combat Protocol Delta. Both dogs shifted instantly, understanding the significance of the command. Handlers making her move, a contractor shouted. All units, contain those dogs. But Victoria had counted on this reaction. As the contractors focused on Max and Duke, she implemented the next phase of her plan. The dogs weren't just creating chaos, they were systematically forcing the contractors into exactly the position she wanted them. Venom Elena, execute Phase 2. The plateau erupted into coordinated chaos. Venom's riders launched their assault, while Elena's truckers began their part of the operation. The contractors, despite their training, found themselves caught in a tactical scenario they'd never trained for. "The case!" Crimson's shout carried real fear now. Protect the case at all costs. Victoria moved through the chaos like a ghost, her own military training matching her dog's precision. Years of combat operations had taught her that sometimes the best approach was the most direct one. "Handler!" Nash's voice carried urgency. "Those electronic warfare units, they're powering up. Whatever they're planning, let them try," Victoria replied calmly. "They've forgotten the most important lesson from military service." She watched as Max and Duke continued their precision movements, forcing the contractors to react exactly as she'd predicted. "And what's that?" Crimson demanded, his voice betraying his growing uncertainty. "Technology can fail," Victoria answered as thunder rolled overhead. "Equipment can malfunction, but the bond between handler and dog, that never fails." The night. Air crackled with tension as Victoria Parker prepared to demonstrate exactly why she and her dogs had been the best in their unit. Crimson had resources, equipment, and trained operators, but he'd forgotten something crucial. Sometimes the most effective weapon isn't a weapon at all. Sometimes it's the trust between partners who would die for each other. The storm raged overhead as Victoria gave her next command. The real battle was about to begin. The electronic warfare units powered up with an audible hum, their sophisticated equipment designed to neutralize any tactical advantage. But Victoria had been waiting for this moment. Max and Duke's training had prepared them for exactly this type of situation. "EW units active," Don reported through the tactical channel. "They're trying to jam all communications and tactical systems." Victoria smiled grimly. "That's their mistake. Max, Duke, acoustic command mode." Both dogs shifted instantly, responding to hand signals and whistle commands just as they'd been trained. No technology required. "Handler's dogs are still operational," a contractor shouted, genuine confusion in his voice. "The jammers aren't affecting their coordination." Crimson's rage was palpable. "Because she's not relying on technology, you idiots. This is old-school military training. All units converge on those dogs. They're the key to her entire strategy." Lightning illuminated the plateau as Victoria's plan unfolded. The contractors' focus on her dogs was exactly what she'd counted on. They'd forgotten the first rule of tactical operations: never focus solely on the obvious threat. Venom, now! Victoria's command triggered a coordinated assault. The Sand Scorpions launched their attack from multiple directions, their motorcycles' engines drowning out any attempt at verbal coordination among the contractors. The plane. Elena's voice cut through their secure channel. "They're trying to move the tactical data. 3 operators breaking for the aircraft." Victoria clicked her tongue twice, a signal that sent Max and Duke into their most advanced formation. The dogs moved like shadows through the chaos, their movements forcing the contractors to constantly adjust their positions. "Handler!" Nash's urgency was clear. "State police are 8 minutes out, but those EW units are blocking their communications. They're coming in blind." Thunder crashed as Victoria implemented the next phase of her plan. "Don, Carol, execute, Protocol Charlie." Suddenly, every vehicle on the plateau activated their emergency systems simultaneously. Lights, sirens, and horns created a wall of sensory overload that the contractors' tactical gear amplified rather than filtered. "The dogs!" A contractor's panicked voice carried across the chaos. "They're herding us. Everyone fall back to..." His warning came too late. Victoria had positioned Max and Duke perfectly, using their advanced training to systematically force the contractors into increasingly disadvantageous positions. Crimson's making a move, Eleanor reported. 2 vehicles providing cover while he heads for the plane. Victoria spotted him through the storm, running with the metal case while his contractors maintained a protective formation. Professional, coordinated, exactly what she'd expected. "All units," she commanded, "implement Delta Protocol." The response was immediate. Venom's riders adjusted their patterns while Eleanor's truckers moved to cut off escape routes. "You don't understand what you're interfering with," Crimson shouted over the chaos. "These protocols, they're the future of private military operations. Billions in contracts, unlimited potential." Victoria's response was to signal Max and Duke into their most aggressive stance. The dog's presence alone was enough to make hardened contractors hesitate. They recognized genuine military training when they saw it. "Those EW units are starting to overload," Don reported. "The weather's affecting their systems. You've got maybe 2 minutes before they shut down completely." Perfect timing. Victoria had been counting on the storm's interference. "Nash, status on those state police units?" 6 minutes out. But thermal imaging shows more vehicles. "Approaching from the north. Looks like his backup plan has a backup plan." Lightning revealed the full tactical situation. Contractors trying to maintain formation around Crimson, Venom's riders creating strategic chaos, and 2 military-trained German Shepherds systematically dismantling professional operators' defensive positions. "Handler!" Crimson's voice carried desperate fury now. "Last chance. Think about what you're throwing away. With your experience, my connections, we could revolutionize private military operations." Victoria moved through the chaos like a ghost, her own training complementing her dog's precision. "That's your fundamental mistake, Crimson. You think everything's about profit. But some things, loyalty, duty, the bond between handler and dog, those things aren't for sale." The storm intensified as Victoria's words hung in the air. Thunder crashed as she implemented the final phase of her plan. Max and Duke responded instantly, their movements so perfectly coordinated that the contractors couldn't effectively track them. "The case!" a contractor shouted. "They're not targeting us. They're forcing us away from the case." Victoria allowed herself a small smile. Finally they understood, but it was too late. The dogs had already accomplished their real mission, systematically separating Crimson from his protective detail. "All units converge on my position." Crimson's command carried real fear now. "Protect this data at all costs." Your clients are about to learn a valuable lesson," Victoria cut him off, "about the difference between buying loyalty and earning it." The plateau erupted into final chaos as Victoria Parker demonstrated exactly why she and her dogs had been the elite of their unit. The contractors had technology, numbers, and professional training, but they'd forgotten the most important lesson from military service. The strongest weapon isn't the most expensive. It's the bond between partners who trust each other absolutely. "Max, Duke, end this." The night air crackled with tension as her dogs moved to execute their final commands. Crimson had resources and backup plans, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed everything could be bought and sold. Victoria Parker was about to remind him that some things were beyond price. Lightning split the sky as Max and Duke executed their final approach. The dogs moved with lethal precision, forcing Crimson's remaining contractors into increasingly desperate positions. Years of combat training had prepared them for exactly this type of operation. "EW units are failing." Don's voice carried through the tactical channel. "Storms completely disrupted their systems." Victoria watched as Crimson's technological advantage crumbled. His contractors, stripped of their sophisticated equipment, found themselves facing opponents they couldn't effectively counter. The plane's trying to take off, Elena reported urgently. Pilots starting the engines. Through the storm, Victoria spotted Crimson making his move. The metal case clutched tight. He sprinted toward the aircraft while his remaining security team provided covering fire with non-lethal rounds. "Handler!" Venom's voice cut through the chaos. "My boys can block the runway, but those contractors have some serious hardware." Victoria's mind raced through options, evaluating angles and approaches just as she'd done countless times in combat. Nash status on backup, 3 minutes out. But Vic thermal imaging shows more vehicles approaching from the north, professional teams, heavily armed. Thunder crashed as Victoria made her decision. Max, Duke, Protocol Omega. Both dogs responded instantly, understanding the significance of the command. This was the most advanced maneuver in their repertoire, something they'd practiced but never had to use in actual combat. "All units, fall back," Crimson shouted as he recognized the dog's formation. "Protect this case at all costs. The data inside is worth more than your contracts." Victoria moved like a shadow through the chaos, her own military training matching her dog's precision. Elena, implement final blockade. Venom, prepare your people. Don, Carol, full-spectrum tactical support. The plateau erupted into coordinated action. Elena's truckers moved their rigs into position, while Venom's riders launched their most aggressive maneuvers yet. The contractors, despite their training, found themselves caught in a tactical scenario they'd never encountered. The dogs! A contractor's panicked voice carried across the storm. "They're not attacking, they're—" His realization came too late. Max and Duke weren't trying to engage the contractors directly. Their precise movements were systematically cutting off every possible escape route, herding both contractors and their vehicles into a steadily shrinking perimeter. "Crimson's reached the plane," Don reported, "but something's wrong with the engines. The storm's affecting their systems." Victoria allowed herself a grim smile. Sometimes nature was the best ally. "Nash, your people ready?" "State police are in position. Just give us the signal." Lightning illuminated the scene as Victoria implemented the final phase of her plan. The contractors, their sophisticated equipment rendered useless by the storm, were forced to rely on basic training. But basic training wasn't enough against military working dogs operating at peak efficiency. "Handler," Crimson's voice carried genuine desperation now. "Think about what you're doing. This data, it's the future of private military operations. The training protocols alone are worth millions." "That's your final mistake," Victoria replied, her voice carrying across the chaos. "You think everything can be bought and sold, but real loyalty, real partnership, that's earned through trust, sacrifice, and respect." Max and Duke moved in perfect synchronization, their years of training culminating in this moment. The contractors, realizing too late what was happening, found themselves completely outmaneuvered. "The case!" Crimson clutched the metal container tighter. "Everything I've worked for, all the research, all the protocols." Thunder crashed as Victoria gave her final command. Max and Duke executed a pincer movement that would have made their military trainers proud. The contractors, caught between highly trained dogs and the approaching state police, began throwing down their weapons. "It's over, Crimson," Victoria called out as lightning revealed his isolated position. "Your contractors are surrendering, your equipment's failed, and your escape route's blocked. Make this easier on yourself." But Crimson had one last desperate move. He pulled something from his jacket, a military-grade sonic device designed to incapacitate dogs. "Stay back! One press of this button, and your precious partners." His threat died in his throat as Max and Duke demonstrated exactly why they'd been the elite of their unit. The dog's movement was so fast, so precise, that Crimson didn't even have time to activate the device. Years of combat experience had taught them to recognize and neutralize threats before they materialized. Impossible. Crimson stared in disbelief as the device clattered away, his wrist locked in Max's careful but immobilizing grip, while Duke maintained perfect containment position. They shouldn't be able to... They're not just trained, Victoria explained as she approached, state police vehicles finally arriving behind her. They're partners, and partners watch out for each other. The storm began to die down as Nash's teams moved in, securing contractors and evidence. Elena's truckers maintained their blockade, while Venom's riders ensured no one slipped away in the confusion. The case, Nash said as he approached. Let's see exactly what was worth all this. Victoria knelt beside her dogs, checking them for any injuries as the metal case was secured. Max and Duke maintained their professional demeanor, but she could sense their satisfaction. Mission accomplished, just like old times. Handler, Venom approached, respect evident in his voice. Your dogs, they're something else. Remind me never to get on their bad side. Victoria smiled as she rewarded Max and Duke with their favorite ear scratches. They're the best partners anyone could ask for, because they choose to be. The first light of dawn began to break over the mountains as state police led Crimson away. His private military operation was finished, his network exposed, his carefully gathered tactical data now evidence in multiple federal investigations. But Victoria Parker wasn't thinking about any of that. She was focused on her dogs, her partners, her family. They'd faced down professional operators, sophisticated technology, and desperate criminals together. And they'd won, because of something money couldn't buy, the unbreakable bond between a handler and her dogs. Ready to go home, boys? She asked softly. Max and Duke's tails wagged in perfect synchronization. They'd done their duty, protected the innocent, and reminded everyone why military working dogs were considered the elite of their profession. The sun rose over the plateau as Victoria Parker prepared to leave, her dogs at her side. They had a delivery to complete. Children were waiting for those medical supplies, and Victoria Parker never failed a mission, especially not with partners like these. The sunrise painted the plateau in shades of gold as state police secured the scene. Victoria watched from her position near the SUV, Max and Duke maintaining their vigilant guard despite the immediate threat being over. Years of combat experience had taught them that aftermath could be just as dangerous as confrontation. 23. Contractors in custody, Nash reported as he approached. Plus Crimson and his core team. The evidence in that case, it's worse than we thought. Victoria raised an eyebrow. How bad? International weapons firms, private military corporations, even some government contractors. He wasn't just selling dogs and training protocols. He was building a whole shadow infrastructure. Elena's voice crackled through their tactical channel. Main highways clear. Medical supplies are still secure. We can make Houston by nightfall if we push it. Victoria checked her watch. Those children were still waiting for their medications. Even after everything that had happened, the original mission remained priority. Don, Carol, status on our route? Got 3 alternate paths mapped out, Carol responded. State police are providing escort, but honestly, after what happened here, I don't think anyone's going to mess with you for a while. Through her tactical gear, Victoria watched as police units processed the scene. The private plane's pilot had surrendered without resistance. Apparently his contract didn't cover firefights with military working dogs. Handler. Venom approached, keeping a respectful distance from Max and Duke. My boys are pulling out, but I wanted to say, what your dogs did here, never seen anything like it. Victoria nodded acknowledgement. The sand scorpions might be criminals, but they'd proven themselves when it counted. Your people did good work tonight. Maybe consider using those skills for something more constructive in the future. A ghost of a smile crossed Venom's face. Might be time for a career change, especially since Crimson's operation just got blown wide open. Speaking of which, Nash interjected, holding up the metal case. Our tech team just cracked this. Training protocols, tactical data, psychological profiles of handlers and dogs. He was selling everything. Complete packages for anyone wanting to build private military canine units without oversight. Victoria knelt to check Max and Duke's equipment. Both dogs remained alert but relaxed, understanding that the immediate mission was complete. How many dogs were they targeting? Based on these contracts, dozens, military working dogs, retired service dogs, even specially trained police canines. They were building a whole underground network. Elena joined them, wiping grease from her hands. Truck's ready to roll. Those kids in Houston won't have to wait much longer for their medicine. Victoria smiled as she recalled their original mission. It felt like days ago, not hours. Any sign of Crimson's backup teams? Turned around when they saw the state police presence, Don reported through the tactical channel. Looks like even private military contractors know when to cut their losses. The morning sun climbed higher as Victoria conducted a final check of her equipment. Max and Duke watched the process with professional interest, their training evident in every alert movement. You know, Nash said quietly, with what we found in that case, this is going to spark investigations across multiple states, maybe even internationally. Victoria nodded. Good. Maybe it'll make people think twice about treating military dogs. Like commodities, they're not equipment, they're partners. As if understanding her words, Max and Duke shifted closer. Victoria smiled as she scratched their favorite spots. These weren't just highly trained military assets, they were family. Vic, Elena called out, got the final manifest update. Those medical supplies? They're for kids with rare conditions. Some of them have been waiting months for this treatment. That settled it. Victoria Parker had never failed a mission, and she wasn't about to start now. Nash, you good here? The sergeant nodded. Got everything we need. State police will handle. Prisoner transport. FBI's already flying in to take custody of Crimson and that tactical data. Handler. Venom approached one last time. Word's going to spread about what happened here. About how 2 military dogs took down professional contractors and exposed an international operation. Victoria checked her tactical gear one final time. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Might make some people think twice about treating military working dogs like commodities to be bought and sold. The morning air was crisp as Victoria prepared for the final leg of their journey. The plateau that had been a battlefield now seemed peaceful. Though signs of the night's confrontation remained everywhere. Elena, you've got point. Don, Carol, coordinate with state police for escort positions. Let's get these supplies to Houston. As Victoria climbed into her vehicle, Max and Duke took their positions with practiced efficiency. They might be the heroes of the hour, but right now they had a more important job, helping their handler complete her delivery mission. One more thing, Nash called out as Victoria prepared to leave. Those training protocols Crimson was selling, they were missing something crucial, something no amount of money can buy. Victoria smiled as she checked her mirrors, Max and Duke, alert and ready beside her. The bond between handler and dog, that's not something you can teach in a manual or sell to the highest bidder. The sun climbed higher as Victoria Parker's truck pulled away from the plateau, state police escort falling. Into formation around her. They had a long drive ahead, but that was nothing new. She'd driven countless miles with Max and Duke at her side, facing everything from sandstorms to insurgents. This mission had started as a simple delivery run. It had evolved into something much larger, exposing an international trafficking operation, stopping a major security threat, and reminding everyone why military working dogs were considered the elite of their profession. But right now, they were just 3 partners doing what they did best, working together to help people in need. The highway stretched out before them as Victoria Parker and her dogs continued their journey. There would be other challenges, other threats. other missions, but as long as they faced them together, she had no doubts about the outcome, because some things couldn't be bought, sold, or trained into existence. Some things had to be earned through trust, respect, and unwavering loyalty. The bond between a handler and her dogs was one of those things. The Texas border loomed ahead as Victoria's truck maintained a steady pace, state police escorts flanking. Her position: Max and Duke remained alert despite the hours of driving, their training allowing them to stay focused even after the intense confrontation on the plateau. "Media's going crazy with this story," Elena reported through their tactical channel. "Every news outlet from here to California is talking about military dogs taking down an international trafficking ring." Victoria checked her mirrors, a habit ingrained from countless combat missions. Let them talk. As long as these supplies reach Houston, that's all that matters. "About that," Nash's voice cut in. "Got some new information from the FBI team processing. Grimson's data looks like he had people inside multiple hospitals. They were using medical supply routes to move tactical equipment." The revelation made Victoria's jaw tighten. "Any contacts in Houston?" "Nothing confirmed yet. But stay alert. Sometimes the most dangerous players are the ones in legitimate positions." Don's voice joined the conversation. "Got our trucker network watching every approach to the city. Any suspicious movement, you'll know about it." The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Victoria's convoy approached the Texas state line. She could feel the tension in Max and Duke. They sensed her concern about potential threats at their destination. "Handler," a new voice crackled through their secure channel. "Venom, checking in one last time. My boys spotted some interesting activity near Houston. Bunch of private security vehicles moving into position around the medical district." Victoria processed this information while maintaining her steady pace. "Nash, on it, running plates and checking contractors." "But Vic, Crimson's operation was bigger than we thought. The FBI's already uncovered connections to 3 other trafficking networks. Eyes on those security vehicles," Elena reported. "They're setting up checkpoints around the hospital district. Look professional, but something feels off." Victoria's combat instincts kicked in. "Don, Carol, we need alternate approach routes to the hospital. Elena, maintain visual contact with those checkpoints. Nash, already coordinating with Houston PD," the sergeant confirmed, "but their response time might be slow. Got reports of multiple incidents, drawing their attention away from the medical district." "Classic distraction technique," Victoria muttered. Years of military experience told her this was coordinated. They're trying to isolate the hospital. Through her tactical gear, Victoria spotted the security checkpoints Elena had mentioned. Their positioning was too precise, too professional. These weren't standard hospital security measures. "Got more information on those contracts," Nash reported grimly. Crimson wasn't just selling tactical data, he was selling complete infiltration packages, everything needed to compromise secure facilities. Victoria checked her cargo monitors. The medical supplies were secure, but they were running out of time. Some of these treatments needed specific handling, and the children waiting for them couldn't afford delays. "Handler," Elena's voice carried. "Urgency. Those security teams are stopping every vehicle entering the medical district. They're looking for something specific, or someone," Victoria replied. They knew these supplies were coming. Crimson's operation wasn't just about dogs. It was about controlling key transport routes. Max and Duke shifted positions slightly, picking up on her tension. These weren't just highly trained military dogs. They were partners who could read every nuance of their handler's behavior. "Carol here," the truck stop owner's voice crackled through. "Got some interesting chatter on our networks. Private contractors asking about military working dogs in the area. They're spooked after what happened on the plateau." Victoria allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Maybe they'll think twice about their career choices." She studied the approaching checkpoints through her tactical gear. "Nash, status on Houston PD." Still tied up with those incidents. But I've got state police moving into position. Just need 15 minutes to get enough units in place." "Those kids don't have 15 minutes, Victoria said firmly. The sun was getting low, and some of these medications needed to be administered before nightfall. Elena's truck maintained position ahead of them. "Got an idea, Vic, but you're not going to like it." "Handler," Venom cut in unexpectedly, "my boys spotted something interesting. There's a service entrance on the west side of the hospital complex. Security's lighter there." Victoria's tactical mind raced through options. The direct approach would be expected. That's what these security teams were counting on. But she hadn't survived countless combat missions by being predictable. Don Carroll need real-time updates on those security positions. "Elena, maintain your lead, but be ready to split off. Nash, way ahead of you," the sergeant replied. "Got plainclothes officers moving into position around that service entrance. Just say the word." Victoria checked her dog's positions. Max and Duke sat perfectly still, reading her body language, understanding that another tactical situation was developing. Their training allowed them to remain calm, yet ready for anything. "Those contractors," Carroll reported. "They're carrying some serious hardware under those security uniforms. Whatever they're planning, they're not planning anything," Victoria cut in. "They're reacting. After what happened on the plateau, every criminal organization connected to Crimson is scrambling to protect their operations." The Houston skyline appeared on the horizon as Victoria Parker prepared for one final tactical challenge. The security teams ahead were professional, well-equipped, and desperate to maintain their control over medical supply routes. But they'd forgotten something crucial. They weren't dealing with a simple truck driver. They were facing a former military working dog handler who turned seemingly impossible situations to her advantage countless times. "All units," Victoria commanded, her voice carrying the authority of years of combat experience. "Execute protocol. Omega, let's remind these contractors why military working dogs earned their reputation." The Texas sun began to set as Victoria's team moved into their final positions. They had medical supplies to deliver, children waiting for treatment, and one last obstacle to overcome. But Victoria Parker had never failed a mission, especially not with partners like Max and Duke at her side. The real question wasn't whether they'd succeed. The real question was how many contractors would learn the hard way that some missions were about more than money. They were about duty, honor, and the unbreakable bond between a handler and her dogs. The hospital waited ahead as Victoria prepared to demonstrate that lesson one final time. The Houston Medical District loomed ahead as darkness began to fall. Victoria watched through her. Tactical gear as security contractors maintained their checkpoints, their movements betraying professional military training. Max and Duke sat perfectly still, ready for her signal. 6 checkpoints confirmed, Elena reported through their secure channel. "They're stopping every vehicle, checking manifests. These guys know what they're looking for." Victoria studied the hospital complex layout on her tactical display. "Nash, status on those plainclothes officers?" "In position around the service entrance." "But Vic, we've got a problem. Just intercepted some radio chatter. They've got someone inside the hospital monitoring deliveries." The revelation didn't surprise her. After discovering the extent of Crimson's network, internal corruption was expected. "Don, Carroll, what's the word from your people?" "Got eyes on their command vehicle," Carroll responded. "They're running a professional operation. Military-grade communications, tactical coordination. These aren't rent-a-cops." Victoria's mind raced through options as she watched Elena's truck approach the first checkpoint. Years of combat experience had taught her that sometimes the most obvious approach was the worst option. "Handler," Venom's voice cut in unexpectedly. "My boys spotted something interesting. They're not just checking vehicles. They're scanning for dogs. Got some kind of detection equipment. Makes sense, Nash added. After what happened on the plateau, they're paranoid about military working dogs. But that gives us an advantage. Victoria allowed herself a small smile. Because they're looking for an obvious threat. Elena, you ready? Born ready. Just say the word. The security contractors had set up their checkpoints with professional precision. Their positions covered every direct approach to the hospital, their teams coordinating with practiced efficiency. But they'd made one crucial mistake. All units, Victoria commanded, execute Protocol Delta. The response was immediate. Elena's truck approached the main checkpoint, drawing the contractors' attention. Meanwhile, Victoria's vehicle disappeared down a side street, using the hospital's complex layout to break line of sight. Target, vehicle approaching checkpoint. A contractor's voice crackled through their monitored channel. Initiate scan protocols. Victoria guided her truck through narrow service roads, Max and Duke maintaining perfect silence. Their training allowed them to understand the importance of stealth operations. They're focusing on Elena's truck, Don reported, running full spectrum scans, but something's got them confused. Through her tactical gear, Victoria watched the confusion unfold. The contractor's scanning equipment was picking up traces of military working dogs from Elena's vehicle, exactly as planned. All units converge on checkpoint 1. The contractor's voice carried urgency. We've got positive readings for those military K9s. That's right, Victoria muttered as she positioned her truck near the service entrance. Focus on the obvious threat. Basic tactical mistake. Nash's voice carried satisfaction. Houston PD is moving in. Those incidents keeping them busy just got mysteriously resolved. Full tactical units heading your way. The hospital's service entrance was minimally guarded. The contractors had focused their resources on the main approaches. Victoria watched as 2 plainclothes officers quietly neutralized the single guard post. Elena, status. Got these guys running in circles, her friend replied with obvious enjoyment. Amazing what a few dog toys and some strategic scent placement. Who can do? Victoria's truck rolled silently into the service area, its precious cargo intact. Max and Duke remained perfectly still, understanding that their presence needed to remain undetected. Handler, Venom reported. My boys spotted their command vehicle moving to checkpoint 1. They're completely focused on Elena's truck. Perfect. Victoria had counted on professional operators, following standard tactical protocols. When faced with a known threat, they'd concentrate their resources on containing it. Nash, we're moving in. Signal your people. The hospital's service area erupted into coordinated action. Plainclothes officers secured the approach, while medical staff, legitimate ones, vetted by Nash's team, appeared with gurneys for the supplies. Ma'am, a doctor approached Victoria's window, keeping his voice low. We've got children waiting in for these medications. Some of them. Time is critical, Victoria nodded as she began the transfer process. How many compromised staff have you identified? 3 so far, security supervisor and 2 administrators. FBI's handling them quietly. Through her tactical channel, Victoria monitored the chaos unfolding at the main checkpoint. The contractors were thoroughly distracted, their sophisticated scanning equipment continuing to detect traces of military working dogs around Elena's. On truck, Vic, Nash reported urgently. They're starting to realize something's wrong. Contractor teams are splitting up to check secondary entrances. Let them, Victoria replied calmly, as she supervised the last of the medical supplies being unloaded. By the time they figure it out, all units! The contractor's voice carried genuine panic now. Service entrance breach. The dogs, they're already inside. Victoria allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she watched hospital security, and plainclothes officers moved to secure the area. Max and Duke remained perfectly calm, understanding that their mission was almost complete. Teams moving to service entrance! Multiple contractor voices overlapped on their tactical channel. "Contain the situation. The client wants those supplies." Their chatter cut off as Houston PD tactical units finally arrived, their sirens filling the night. The contractors, their operation compromised and their cover blown, began a rapid withdrawal. "Hospital is secure," Nash reported with satisfaction. "Medical supplies are being distributed to the children's ward. FBI's moving in to collect evidence on the compromised staff, and those contractors, they're running into heavy traffic on every exit route." Victoria smiled as she watched Elena's truck finally approach the hospital, no longer needed as a decoy. Don and Carol's trucker network had coordinated perfectly, creating strategic traffic jams that would give law enforcement plenty of time to identify and track the fleeing contractors. "Handler," Venom's voice carried respect, "my boys are pulling out, but I wanted to say the way you played those contractors, using their own protocols against them, that was something else. Sometimes the best tactical advantage is knowing how your opponent thinks," Victoria replied, as she watched the last of the medical supplies disappear into the hospital. "Professional operators follow patterns, makes them predictable." Max and Duke shifted slightly, sensing that their mission was nearly complete. Victoria reached back to scratch their favorite spots, proud of how perfectly they'd performed. Their presence alone had been enough to distract and confuse an entire tactical operation. "Vic," Elena called out as she parked nearby, "got final confirmation from the children's ward. Medications are being administered. We made it in time." Victoria Parker allowed herself to relax slightly as she watched legitimate hospital staff secure the area. What had started as a simple delivery run had exposed an international trafficking operation, dismantled a major criminal enterprise, and still managed to get vital medicine to children in need. Nash, status on the investigation? FBI's taking over. Between Crimson's captured data and what we found here, looks like we've uncovered trafficking operations in 6 states, maybe more. The night air was cool as Victoria prepared to leave the hospital complex. Their mission was complete, but she knew this was just the beginning. Crimson's network had been vast, and there would be other operations to uncover, other threats to face. But right now she had 2 tired dogs who deserved the best dinner she could find, because at the end of the day, that's what partnership was about, taking care of each other. "Ready to go home, boys?" she asked softly. Max and Duke's synchronized tail wags told her everything she needed to know. They'd faced down professional contractors, exposed criminal operations, and helped save children's lives. Just another day's work for a handler and her dogs. Dawn broke over Don's truck stop as Victoria's team gathered in the secure back room. Max and Duke lay alert but relaxed near her feet, their mission complete, but their training never fully dormant. The past 24 hours had changed everything, and now it was time to understand exactly how much. FBI's preliminary report just came in, Nash announced, spreading documents across the table. Crimson's operation wasn't just about dog trafficking. They were using medical supply routes to move tactical equipment, classified training data, even military-grade hardware. Elena leaned forward, studying the documents. "How deep does this go?" 6 states confirmed so far, Nash replied. "But that's just the beginning. Those contractors at the hospital, they were working for a private military corporation with international connections. This is going to spark investigations across multiple borders." Victoria absently scratched behind Max's ears as she processed this information. "The children who needed those medications, they're all okay?" "All receiving treatment," Don confirmed, pride evident in his voice. "Hospital staff said some of them wouldn't have made it another day without those supplies." "You did good, handler." Carol entered with fresh coffee for everyone. "Got word from our trucker network. Those security contractors who ran from the hospital? State police picked them up trying to cross into Louisiana. They're already talking to federal agents." Speaking of talking, Nash added, Crimson's not staying quiet either. Seems he wants to make a deal. Started naming names as soon as he realized how much evidence we had. Victoria studied the tactical map on the wall, showing the known extent of the trafficking operation. How many other military working dogs were they targeting? At least 30 identified so far. Former service dogs, retired canines, even some still in active duty. They were building their own private military dog program, selling complete packages to the highest bidders. Elena shook her head in disgust. All about the money. They didn't care about the dogs, the handlers, or the people they were supposed to be protecting. That's why they failed, Victoria said quietly, looking at Max and Duke. They thought everything could be bought and sold. They didn't understand that real partnership, real loyalty, that has to be earned. About that, Nash cleared his throat. FBI wants to talk to you. Your experience with military working dogs, your tactical knowledge. They're putting together a task force. Wants to shut down similar operations before they can get established. Victoria raised an eyebrow. They want me to consult? They want you to lead, Nash corrected. You and your dogs exposed an international trafficking ring, outwitted professional military contractors, and still completed your delivery mission. That kind of experience is invaluable. Don and Carol exchanged looks. Our truck stop network is at your disposal, Don offered. What you did here, protecting those dogs, those children, that's something worth supporting. And you'll have backup, Elena added with a grin. Already talked to some other truckers, a lot of veterans in our community, people who understand what you're fighting for. Victoria looked at her dogs, remembering countless missions in combat zones. They'd faced insurgents, IEDs, and impossible odds together. Now they were being asked to take on a different kind of fight. There's more, Nash continued. Those tactical protocols Crimson was selling, they're already being used by other organizations. Private military companies looking to build their own K9 units without oversight or regulations. Which means more. Dogs being treated like equipment, Victoria finished. More handlers being corrupted by money. More people forgetting what real partnership means. Through the window, she could see the sun climbing higher over the desert. Somewhere out there, other military working dogs might be facing similar threats. Other handlers might be struggling with similar choices. Venom called, Carol mentioned. Casually. Says his crew's done with the criminal life. Wants to know if they can help. Seems working with you showed them a better way to use their skills. Victoria allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes the best allies came from unexpected places. Nash, what kind of authority would this task force have? Full federal backing, multiple agency support, complete operational freedom to track down and shut down these trafficking operations. But it's dangerous work. These organizations, they have resources, connections. They have money, Victoria corrected. We have something better. She looked at Max and Duke, seeing the same dedication in their eyes that had carried them through countless combat missions. We have partners who choose to serve. Elena grinned. Count me in. My truck's always ready for another run. Our network can provide safe houses intelligence, whatever you need, Don added. Carol's already coordinating with other truck stops across the country. Victoria stood, her decision made. Max and Duke rose with her, their movements perfectly synchronized after years of working together. These organizations think everything has a price. That loyalty can be bought, that partnership can be programmed. Time to prove them wrong, Nash asked, already knowing the answer. Time to remind them why military working dogs earned their reputation, Victoria confirmed, and why the bond between handler and dog is something no amount of money can replicate. The morning sun cast long shadows across the truck stop as Victoria's team began planning their next moves. They had identified targets, gathered intelligence, and found allies in unexpected places. But most importantly, they had a purpose. One condition, Victoria said, as she reviewed the FBI's proposal. Max and Duke aren't just assets for this task force. They're full partners. Everything we do as a team. Nash nodded, understanding. Completely. Already in the paperwork. These dogs aren't just highly trained military assets. They're decorated veterans who've earned their status. Victoria Parker, former military working dog handler turned trucking specialist, now found herself preparing for a new kind of mission, one that would take her across the country, tracking down those who thought military dogs could be bought and sold like equipment. But she wasn't worried. She had the best partners anyone could ask for. She had a team of dedicated professionals, ready to support her, and most importantly, she had a chance to protect other dogs and handlers from those who would exploit them. "Ready for a new mission, boys?" she asked softly. Max and Duke's alert posture told her everything she needed to know. They'd faced down professional contractors, exposed international criminals, and saved children's lives together. This new challenge, this was just the beginning of their next chapter. The sun climbed higher as Victoria's team finalized their plans. Somewhere out there, other military working dogs needed their help. Other handlers needed to be reminded what real partnership meant, and Victoria Parker had never been one to back down from a worthy fight, especially not with partners like these at her side. The sunset painted the Arizona desert in shades of gold as Victoria finished loading her truck for their next run. Max and Duke watched from their positions, their alertness never wavering despite the peaceful scene. 1 week had passed since the Houston operation, but their world had transformed completely. Task Force credentials just came through, Nash announced, approaching with an official folder. "You've got full federal authority to investigate and shut down trafficking operations across state lines. Plus, some interesting intel just came in from California." Victoria secured the last of their equipment. "Another operation targeting military dogs? Bigger. Looks like some private military contractors are setting up training facilities along the coast. Same model as Crimson's operation, but more sophisticated." Elena's truck pulled into the stop, laden with new tactical gear. "Got everything we need for an extended operation. Don and Carol's network already has safe houses set up along the route." Victoria studied the intelligence photos Nash had brought. The California operation looked professional, well-funded. But then, so had Crimson's organization before they'd exposed it. Handler. Venom approached, keeping a respectful distance from Max and Duke. He'd traded his gang colors for civilian clothes. "My boys finished their first legitimate security job. Hospital says they did good work. Funny how things change," Victoria commented, remembering their first hostile encounter. "A week ago, you were running with the Sand Scorpions. Now you're providing hospital security." "Yeah, well," Venom shrugged. "Watching you and your dogs work showed us there's better ways to use our skills. Plus, legitimate paycheck beats. Looking over your shoulder all the time." Carol emerged from the truck stop office with fresh intelligence. "Got reports from our network in California. Those contractors, they're recruiting, looking for handlers with military experience, specifically those with financial problems. Targeting vulnerable veterans," Victoria said grimly. "Offering them money to compromise their training, their principles." "Not just veterans," Nash added. "Got word some active duty personnel might be involved. Pentagon's taking it seriously. This could be bigger than Crimson's operation." Victoria checked her tactical gear one final time. The FBI credentials felt strange after years of independent operation, but they'd help with what was coming. "Your old delivery routes are covered," Elena assured her. "Got some trusted drivers taking over the regular runs. This task force needs you more." Don approached with updated maps. "Our network's growing. Got truck stops in 3 more states. Joining the intelligence sharing program. These traffickers won't find it so easy to move around anymore." Victoria knelt beside Max and Duke, checking their equipment. The dogs remained perfectly still, understanding the importance of proper preparation. Their tactical vests now carried official task force insignia alongside their military service decorations. "One more thing," Nash said quietly. "Remember those. Kids in Houston. Hospital says they're all responding to treatment. Their families, they want to meet the handler and dogs who made sure those medications got through." Victoria smiled softly. "Maybe after we deal with California. Right now, there are other dogs and handlers who need our help." "Speaking of help," Eleanor interjected, "I got word from some other trucker veterans. They want in. Seems word's spreading about what we did here." "Good," Victoria replied. "We'll need all the help we can get. These trafficking operations, they're not just about money anymore. They're about corrupting everything military working dogs stand for." The desert wind carried the smell of sage as Victoria's team made their final preparations. They had a long drive ahead, followed by what promised to be a complex operation, but that was nothing new. "Nash, you're sure about the California intel?" "Multiple sources confirm it. They're building something big out there. Training facilities, tactical courses, even specialized equipment. Everything needed to turn military working dogs into private assets." Victoria looked at her dogs, remembering their countless missions together. From combat zones to criminal operations, they'd faced every challenge as a team. This new threat would be no different. "Handler," Venom spoke up. "My boys picked up some chatter. Those contractors in California, they're scared. Word about what happened here, how you and your dogs took down Crimson's whole operation. It's got them nervous." "Good," Victoria replied. "Maybe they'll think twice about treating military dogs like commodities." The stars began appearing overhead as final preparations were completed. Victoria's truck, now modified with additional tactical equipment, stood ready for their next mission. "You know," Elena mused, "a week ago we were just trying to deliver medical supplies. Now we're part of a federal task force hunting down international trafficking operations." "Funny how life works out," Victoria agreed. "But some things don't change. The bond between handler and dog, the trust between partners, that's constant. That's what these traffickers don't understand." Max and Duke moved to their positions in the truck, their training evident in every precise movement. They weren't just military assets or tactical advantages. They were partners, family, the most reliable teammates anyone could ask for. "Ready to roll?" Nash asked, checking his own gear. Victoria Parker, former military working dog handler now, federal task force leader, looked at her assembled team. Elena with her tactical driving skills, Don and Carol with their nationwide network, Nash with his law enforcement connections, and even Venom with his reformed crew. All of them united in a common cause, but most importantly, she had Max and Duke, partners who'd never let her down, never wavered in their loyalty, never forgotten their training or their purpose. "California won't know what hit them," Elena grinned. "That's not what matters," Victoria corrected as she climbed into her truck. "What matters is showing everyone why military working dogs aren't just assets to be bought and sold. They're partners who choose to serve." The night air filled with the sound of engines as Victoria's task force prepared to move out. They had traffickers to stop, dogs to protect, and handlers to remind about the true meaning of partnership. Just another mission for a handler and her dogs. But this time, they weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every military working dog who'd ever served, every handler who'd ever understood that some bonds can't be bought or sold. The Arizona stars shone bright as Victoria. Parker and her team began their journey west. There would be other battles, other challenges, other operations to run, but that was okay. Because some things were worth fighting for, and the bond between handler and dog, that was worth everything. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss this. Just click to watch, and don't forget to subscribe. it would mean a lot.